Hey guys, picture this. You're draped in layers of constricting silks, powdered from head to toe in a toxic cloud of lead, and desperately fanning away the fumes as your nostrils burn. Now, that's a morning routine. Before you get comfortable, please hit like and subscribe, but only if you truly enjoy what I do. Drop a comment telling me where you're tuning in from and what time it is for you. It's always fascinating to see who's joining us from around the world. Now dim the lights, maybe turn on a fan for that soft background hum, and let's dive together into today's journey. The moment you step into the Royal Cosmetics chamber, the real fun begins. You know those serene spa scenes in modern beauty ads? Throw them out. This is more like a low-budget medieval horror show with powdered ghosts and arsenic-laced elixirs. First, someone slathers your face in a thick layer of ceruse, a gooey blend of white lead and vinegar that promises a flawless ivory complexion. It smells like metal and regret. You can almost hear your skull creaking under the chemical siege as tiny cracks form in the paint, revealing your sweaty, pinkish flesh peeking through. But fear not. Beauty is pain, and lead poisoning is just a small price to pay for looking like a translucent apparition at court. Once your face is rigid enough to survive small tremors or minor earthquakes, you move on to hair. Cue the live poultry parade. Real feathers? Please, you're too grand for that. Instead, your hairdresser pastes on masses of false hair pieces, padding them with wool, moss, and perhaps the occasional stray rat fur, all bound together with a glue concoction that doubles as a hair cement. In some households, women would literally sew hair onto their scalps, creating towering confections that would make even Eiffel's tower blush. One wrong sneeze, and you're left with a head full of rat skeletons. Charming. But let's not forget the pièce de résistance, the corset. Strap in, because your ribs are about to be realigned. This isn't your modern-day cincher that you can take off when you hit the gym. No, this is a wooden bone torture device that laces so tightly your organs start a lobby for relocation. You might think you'd suffocate, but don't worry. That minor shortness of breath simply ensures you won't be caught snoring at court. Underneath those fine gowns, your lungs spend the day negotiating with copper boning and tight laces. Breathing becomes an Olympic sport. Heavy on the bronze, light on the oxygen. As you grimace and gasp, the royal perfumer arrives, bearing the latest scented concoction, a potent blend of musk, civet, and rose water. Fair warning, the civet is derived from a glandular secretion of a small mammal that looks like it was designed entirely to offend humanity. The perfumer dabs the paste on your pulse points. Instantly, you smell like the aftermath of 10,000 wet dogs, mixed with roses, of course. You become the floral musk anchoring the court's olfactory experience, ensuring that everyone within a 10-foot radius regrets their fashion choices for the rest of the day. Next, we move to nails, a royal statement if ever there was one. Your manicurist dips each fingertip into a vat of diluted verdigris paste to achieve that princely shade of green-blue. It's rumored that the pigment comes from copper slugs dissolved in vinegar. The result? A glowing hint of copper poisoning. Congratulations. Your nails are now so toxic that your average handshake could be considered chemical warfare. But hey, they look fabulous. By afternoon, you're exhausted, slightly dizzy, and sporting a complexion that would send any dermatologist into early retirement. Yet the Queen's chaplain whistles approval. His theology apparently requires a face so pale it embarrasses moonlight. You must remind yourself that royalty has always been synonymous with high maintenance. God forbid a princess sneeze and reveal the faintest blush of life beneath her painted mask. But the day is not over. Now comes the ritual bath. In theory, waters scented with rose petals and herbs promise rejuvenation. In reality, these tubs contain stagnant water harvested from the castle moat, warmed over a fire that also cooks dinner downstairs. You sink into this lukewarm swamp, looking for solace, only to discover the duck feathers bobbing around your ankles and a half-dissolved toad or two at your toes. The attendants scoop as many unsavory floaters as they can, but let's be real. Nothing says royal spa day like sharing your soak with medieval wildlife. Once bathed, you're handed a robe embroidered with silken threads and metallic filaments that prick at every inch of skin. This is the fabric of status, impossibly heavy and scratchy because only the truly elite would endure itchy misery for the sake of fashion. You waddle out to face the glare of oil lamps, each flicker revealing your halo of dandruff from the ceruse and the smell of wet rat hair from your wig. Yet, you stand tall, because nothing says regal like aristocratic squalor cloaked in a veil of grandeur, moving toward the final act, the public unveiling. As you step into the throne room, dozens of courtiers bow, curtsy, or do whatever it is they do when forced to admire a struggling human statue. You attempt a dignified nod, but the corset compresses so harshly that you can barely swallow, let alone speak. Your lips crack from dry ceruse, and a stray flake falls onto your sash, like a miniature glacier collapsing under its own weight. The audience misinterprets your agony as divine poise. You've succeeded, your torment mistaken for transcendence. And yet, despite this daily ordeal, you're expected to repeat the process tomorrow. Because in the realm of royalty, beauty is a tyrant, and perfection is mandatory. Any hint of natural skin or breathable clothing would be seen as scandalous. The rumor mill spins. If your ceruse wears off, you risk public humiliation, or worse, losing favor with the sovereign. There's no off day in this game, only an endless loop of lethal potions, suffocating garments, and a hopeless quest to look eternally youthful. The absurdity intensifies when you consider the logistics. Your beauty chamber is staffed by an army of attendants, hairdressers, perfumers, manicurists, all orchestrating your transformation in silent, frantic ballet. They trade gossip mid-powdering, comparing who has lost the most teeth to lead-induced decay, who nearly fainted from arsenic vapors, and who was found twitching like a marionette after her corset was loosened. It's like a private club of the barely alive, united by vanity and fueled by lead poisoning. Each smock and smudge tells a story of survival, or rather, near death. By the time evening descends, you wobble to your chambers, exhausted from inhaling too many scented poisons and bent out of shape by too tight boning. Yet, as you remove the ceruse, you see the pale streaks and blotches that reveal your true flesh. A mass of red, angry reminders that beauty in this era is both absurd and insidious. You fall onto your canopied bed, unlace the corset ever so slightly, and breathe deeply, savoring the fleeting taste of oxygen. In the quiet darkness, you reflect. Modern influencers complain about too much Photoshop and filter fatigue. Ha! They've never spent a day powdered in lead or squeezed into a garment that compresses your very soul. If only they knew. Their biggest dilemma is a bad selfie angle. While you survived another day of aristocratic beauty rituals that would be the stuff of nightmares for any sane human. Remember, survival back then wasn't about finding water in the desert. It was about making it through your cosmetics routine without succumbing to chemical or physical collapse. And that, my friends, is why you wouldn't survive royal beauty routines. It's not the swords or the battles that kill you fastest. It's beauty, an exquisite cruelty dressed in silk, lead, and lace. See you next time when we explore perhaps equally torturous pastimes, like medieval dental care. Seriously, you don't want to miss that. The dawn after your triumphant, toxin-fueled debut is deceptively gentle, like a lullaby before the hangman's noose. You rouse yourself from the shallow slumber afforded by tight corsets, now sufficiently loosened to permit minimal organ twitching, blinking sleep dust from your eyes. Already, the attendants are gathering outside your chamber, eager for their next starring role in your personal horror show. Without a word, they usher you into the purifying, a term as misleading as royal proclamations of peace, bath. Today's special, crushed poppy petals steeped in rancid almond oil. You slip into the lukewarm brine, mindful of the floating detritus, broken shampoo bones. Yes, that was you last month, experimenting with bone dust soap. A soggy scrap of lace and a sentient frog that looks at you with what can only be described as pity. The frog's expression is more sympathetic than any courtier ever dares to be. No sooner have you submerged than the bath mistress commences her sermon. "Hold still," she intones, plunging her gloved hand deep into the mire to retrieve clumps of floating debris. Her glove snaps ominously, like the coffin lid closing on your remaining common sense. She congratulates herself on rescuing esteemed herbal pearls, which turn out to be sludge-coated poppy seeds that you're supposed to gently roll over your skin like exotic microbeads. The friction is less spa-like exfoliation and more medieval sandblasting. Every stroke scrapes away layers of ceruse, revealing patches of raw, beetroot-red flesh. Pain? Yes, but beauty, as always, demands sacrifice. Once you've been scrubbed and rinsed, mostly of your dignity, you're wrapped in a dripping shawl woven from the unholy marriage of camel hair and horsehair, light enough to stink of livestock, heavy enough to bruise shoulders. You stagger into the grooming salon, where your beauty court awaits with gleeful anticipation. The perfumer appears first, bearing an elixir called Eau de Mort d'Amour, a heady cocktail of jasmine, musk, and fermented turnip. You douse your neck liberally, inhaling fumes that sear the back of your throat. You cough twice, as if expelling residual life from your lungs, but are congratulated nonetheless for your dedication to carrying the roar of turnips like a royal battle cry. Next, the hair architect descends upon you with a metal comb the size of a shank bone. It's time for the weekly lice purge, a ritual that rivals crucifixion for medieval entertainment value. Each tooth of the comb snaps through your hair, collecting nodules of uninvited guests. You once counted 42 crawlies removed in a single session, a record apparently, and the guests of honor are displayed like trophies on a silver platter. The hairdresser brandishes each insect as proof of her triumph, as you sit numbly contemplating your life choices. At midday, a trumpet fanfare announces the arrival of the royal dentist. Yes, dentistry, because nothing says survival like having your teeth blackened to conform to aristocratic standards. Today's treatment involves an infernal paste of burnt pewter, vinegar, and gum arabic. The dentist slathers it across your enamel with a rag dipped in suspect metal shavings. Your mouth immediately tastes like melted chalice and regret. Once applied, the paste stains your teeth so perfectly obsidian that you scare small animals at feeding time. But you must sport your jet black grin, for the inimitable queen herself cannot abide a smile that's anything less than mortally dark. Flirting with faintness, you're guided back to your chambers, where the seamstress awaits with a fresh torture device disguised as fashion, a bodice encrusted with thousands of tiny pearls. The needles used to affix each bead have left your skin dotted with microscopic bruises, little constellations of pain. You wriggle into the gown, feeling every pearl cluster digging into your ribs as the bodice is laced tighter than a maiden's vow. The seamstress cackles when you gasp, likening your wheeze to the sigh of a noble swan. You'd swear this swan has a broken wing in severe respiratory distress. The afternoon sun slants through stained glass, casting kaleidoscopic scars on your face, highlighting every pore clogged by yesterday's lid. A mirror is thrust into your trembling hands. You study the reflection, glazed eyes, marshmallow white skin cracked like old porcelain, and scars faintly visible where retouches have peeled. Yet somehow it's beautiful, the pinnacle of perfection. You force a smile, limited, stilted, glued, but it pleases the crown. A courtier bows so deeply he nearly dislocates his spine as thanks for your divine radiance. Now comes the grand event, the public promenade. The corridors are lined with onlookers who have polished their gossip into razor blades. Each step you take in your 17-inch heels, fashionable though unstable, echoes down the corridor like a death knell. The hall is perfumed with 1,000 scented candles, lavender, sandalwood, frankincense, all vying for supremacy. In truth, the scents mingle into an olfactory soup that would floor a modern hazmat team. You pass nobles who nod approvingly, though their faintals from the scent onslaught suggest your perfume is less subtle bouquet and more chemical warfare. Still, you smile through the stench, head held high, literally, thanks to the platform shoes, displaying the fruits of your suffering. As you glide past, a hush falls. For a fleeting moment, you are both idol and cautionary tale. A painted marionette whose every twitch is choreographed by the court's cruel whims. Evening rehearsals for the royal ball commence in the adjacent hall. You are summoned to practice the graceful curtsy, which nowadays resembles more of a mechanical collapse. Your corset permits precisely 2 inches of bend before your ribcage protests. You repeat the curtsy 50 times, each iteration squeezing your diaphragm until speech is a distant memory. Finally, someone deems your performance adequately regal, and you're dismissed, allowed to collapse into a gilded chaise longue. Mercifully, the ball itself is postponed. A surprise thunderstorm floods the courtyard, dissolving the powdered paths and turning silk gowns into waterlogged rags. The guests retreat hastily, mud-caking their hems. You retire to your inner sanctum, dripping like a soggy specter, and listen to the distant rumble of thunder, nature's applause for modern hubris. Night falls, and your final ordeal begins, the beauty sleep that's anything but. You lie beneath a canopy of embroidered velvet, a small fire blazing at your bedside to ward off the damp chill. But the fire's smoke curls around you, stinging your eyes, and you cough into your pillow stuffed with milled oats and lavender, an attempt at restful slumber that accomplishes nothing but a scratchy, sneeze-inducing facial exfoliation. Your maid arrives with the night mask, a paste of honey, crushed pearls, and powdered gemstone, because nothing revives tired royal skin like grainy rock pulp. She applies it with a brush made from badger hair, leaving your complexion sticky enough to trap more dust. You're told this mask will rejuvenate your face as you sleep. In reality, it glues your eyelids shut for half the night and invites more fungal experimentation around the nasal crevices. Sleep finally creeps in, uneven and full of nightmares. You're drowning in lead clouds, your wig morphs into a tangle of vipers, and your corset is a cage tightening around your heart. You jolt awake at dawn, heart pounding, certain that a stray pearl has lodged itself into your sternum. But the world outside demands another day of fervent pretense. And so begins day 3. The chamber doors open to reveal a new lineup of challenges, each more absurd than the last. First up, eyebrow styling. Modern brow pencils are to these rituals what chalk is to cement. You squint as a specialist paints your brows in undulating loops using a fine quill dipped in iron oxide. The goal is to mimic the legendary arch of a mythical swan's wing. The pigment dries within seconds, cracking across your forehead like a desert map. You consider ripping it off in one satisfying peel, but duty prevails. Next, dental hygiene. Because your teeth are now blackened masterpieces, the dentist visits once more to refresh the enamel glaze. This time he employs powdered antimony and white lead, mixed to a lush paste that smells faintly of burning metal. He presses the mixture into every crevice, his gloved fingers probing with alarming gusto. Your cheeks bulge, but you manage to choke out polite thanks. The dentist beams, showing you a triumphant black-toothed grin. You attempt to smile back. It's uneven, like a malfunctioning puppet, but so long as the queen approves, your jaw can seize up permanently. Mid-morning brings the hair odyssey again. The false hair is reapplied, today's theme, waterfall curls. The wig maker coils heat-treated hair around rods, then pastes it to your scalp with animal glue. The rods burn your skin in the process, but once the curls set, they frame your powdered face in perfect symmetry. You feel your head grow heavier by the ounce, as if a casket has been placed atop your skull. By midday, you stagger to the window to glimpse the sky. A courier arrives bearing a fresh shipment of beauty aids from the continent. Alabaster face patches soaked in a tonic of vinegar and crushed pearls, a vial of Irish spring water for making complexion tea, and a box of sachets containing scented silks for placing under the arms. You gratefully accept the parcels, though you know each new product heralds more experiments and misery. Lunch is served on fine porcelain, an elegant repast of pottage, roasted peacock, and candied violets. You nibble politely, but you see the tooth marks in the paste still clinging to your enamel. You wonder if the dentist has replaced your real teeth with hollow ceramic replicas. The sensation is unnerving, yet you dare not speak it aloud. Afternoon is devoted to movement lessons, how to navigate narrow corridors and crowded galleries without toppling over in your lethal footwear or dragging your hem through puddles. A court dance instructor, clad in a suit of slightly less cumbersome attire, guides you through the minuet. You pivot and glide as if on ice, praying you won't end up face first in the polished marble floor. The slightest misstep would be ruinous, not only for your dignity, but also for the precious pearls sewn into your bodice. You perform admirably, despite an embarrassing near collapse that you pass off as a dramatic flair. As the session concludes, you're instructed to rest, just enough to gather strength for the evening's engagements, which include a private audience with the queen and a performance of a tragic opera, where you are to sit expressionless as the heroine bleeds fake tears. You worry your lead-based Ceruse might react unpredictably under hot gaslight, possibly melting into a toxic drool. But such risks are the currency of the court. The afternoon wanes and you're led back to your chambers for final preparations. You receive a last touch-up of rouge, a subtle dab of red ochre on your cheeks meant to whisper of health. The color instantly screams. You look like a porcelain doll that's been dropped in a vat of beet juice. But the artist presses on, blending until your cheeks burn with the deepest shade of indignation. At dusk, you don the gala attire. A gown of silver-threaded satin, heavy enough to require a pulley system to lift. You're helped in, each movement orchestrated by no fewer than 6 servants. The bustle is so voluminous it casts a shadow in the candlelight. You step through the doorway and into the hall, where the queen awaits. Her eyes glide over you like a hawk sizing up prey, and she nods approvingly. At that moment, the world sharpens. Pain, poison, and pretense coalesce into a singular triumph. You stand before the queen, poised and luminous, every inch the picture of aristocratic beauty, though inside, you feel hollow as a carved pumpkin. Yet, you've survived another day of regal rituals that would break most mortals. The court applauds. Their admiration is your reward. But as you curtsy, the pearls in your bodice cut deeper into your flesh, reminding you that beauty in this epoch is both crown and cross. And so, dear viewers, this concludes part 2 of our chronicle, a further descent into the exquisite cruelty of royal beauty routines. Tomorrow, we'll explore the seasonal extravaganza of body powders, seasonal wigs, and the scandalous practice of moisturizing with whale oil. Trust me, you don't want to miss it. The dawn chorus of court begins with the clatter of wooden clogs, and in your chambers, that sound is your personal alarm clock. You awake stiffly, every sinew complaining of last night's whale oil mask residue seeping into your pores. Today's chapter in aristocratic masochism is all about seasonal body powders, wigs that rival small siege engines, and the scandalous practice of moisturizing with the rendered blubber of ocean giants. Strap in, lace up, because luxury has never been more lethal. First, you're delivered a tray of bottles containing pastel powders, rosy for spring, lupine for summer, marshmallow for autumn, and powdered ghost essence for winter, an ironically ethereal name for lead mixed with powdered bones. The groomer dips a puff into a jar labeled Summer's Swelter, a fine dust of rice flour, orris root, and crushed coral. It smells like a seaside breeze laced with despair. They pat it ceremoniously across your décolletage and arms, leaving you shimmeringly opaque and slightly gritty. The experience is akin to rolling in talcum mixed with broken seashells, mildly abrasive and unnervingly perfumed. If you're lucky, the coral dust will exfoliate dead skin. If you're unlucky, it will carve tiny trenches into your flesh that only fill with summer sweat and court gossip. Next comes the seasonal wig reveal. Last month's beehive structure has been replaced with a springtime bouquet wig, complete with real hyacinth blossoms wired into the tresses. The flowers are painstakingly dyed a soft lavender to match your new silk gown, but their petals are already wilting. You can practically hear each blossom gasping for moisture, petals dry crackling when you tilt your head. The wig master applies a thin veil of rice paste to your scalp, and hopes you didn't mind leaving your hairline behind. As the paste dries, your skin feels like it's being sealed into a ceramic mask. You try blinking, but your forehead remains suspiciously immobile. When the wig is finally settled, the scent of fresh blooms mixed with paste-off gassing fills the room. It's so potent that the court's resident herbalist declares it therapeutically stimulating, though your sinuses beg to differ. You manage to utter polite thanks, your mouth still coated in whale oil slick from last night's moisturizing ritual. Ah yes, whale oil. Today's moisturizing blend was extracted from the blubber of a beach leviathan, slowly infused with rosehip and barely tolerable doses of arsenic to stimulate cell renewal. You offered your wrist for a patch test, but the perfumer insisted no. Time. We must be radiant by midday. Now your skin feels slick and ever so slightly toxic, like a freshly oiled sea beast, and you wonder whether renewed cells come with any warranty on your internal organs. By mid-morning, you're led to the alabaster white marble vanity where an array of tinted creams awaits. Seasonal cheeks, the colorist calls it, applying a layered combination of ochre, berry, and vermilion that shifts hue as the sun moves. It's supposed to mimic the fleeting blush of a spring rose, but in practice, you look like a tie-dyed peony. Each blending stroke reveals another crevice in your corroded ceruse layer from part 1, creating a geological map of your face. If you squint, your cheekbones resemble the Alps. If you gasp, you lay bare a cavernous crevice that needs its own zip code. Once your complexion resembles a garden in bloom, you're guided to the dialogue room, where you must practice delivering witty repartee while your body feels like it's been buried in kiln-heated clay. Your coach, a retired jester turned etiquette tutor, asks you to recite the latest court gossip in iambic pentameter so you can charm foreign ambassadors with both your beauty and your verbal dexterity. You stumble through lines about Duchess Gloriana's mislaid petticoat and Sir Percival's hunting mishap, each verse punctuated by a coughing fit brought on by residual whale oil fumes. The tutor applauds your performance, most enchanting, but you suspect the sarcasm is as thick as your seasonal body powder. Lunch arrives, a silver tray of candied violets, poached pheasant, and a custard spiked with cinnamon and crushed pearls. The custard's texture reminds you faintly of cold mortar. You dine elegantly, lips tinged with rouge, teeth still black from Part 2's volcanic dental paste. A passing courtier remarks on your radiant glow, gesturing toward the powder still clinging to your décolletage like dusty snow. You smile transparently, the rouge cracking at the corners of your mouth. She nods, unfazed by the fracture, and prattles on about the upcoming flower-arranging gala, an event you'll attend wearing an even more elaborate spring wig, infused with lilac blossoms and dew collected from the palace rose garden at dawn. Afternoon brings the grand spectacle of perfume layering, an olfactory art form only royalty endures. 4 scent masters await, each with a unique blend intended to evoke the 4 elements. First, air. A whisper of musk, hyacinth, and ozone captured from storm clouds. The scent is delivered via a feather duster coated in perfumed oil, which the master fluffs around your neck and ears until the air smells like a thunderclap between 2 swallows' wings. You sneeze thrice, unfitting for a princess, and are gently chastised. Control your airs, milady. Next, water. A spray of distilled Nile River water steeped in blue lotus and crushed oyster shells. This fine mist settles on you like a saltwater rain, stinging fresh scrapes from your coral dust exfoliation. The stinging is marketed as invigorating. Your senses beg you to cut the ceremony short. You grit your teeth, feeling each bead of moisture slam into your pores like tiny icebergs. Third, earth. A dusting of patchouli, vetiver, and black truffle dust, applied via a brush made from badger hair. The result is a scent that conjures images of a forest floor after a rainstorm, earthy, pungent, and intensely grounding. You suspect this is to remind guests that beneath the finery, you're still a mortal who walks on dirt. You inhale deeply and immediately reconsider. Finally, fire. A small torch is used to heat a metal wand dipped in amber resin. The wand is passed near your hairline and wrists, melting the resin into warm droplets that sizzle on your skin. The scent is smoky, resinous, and slightly suffocating. You gasp at the shock of hot resin, and the master scolds you for failing to embrace the element. You remind yourself that fire once destroyed the Great Hall, and you'd rather not reenact that fiasco on your person. By the time the scent ritual ends, you smell like the entire planet, and perhaps a volcano. You stagger toward the gallery to admire the fruits of your ordeal in a full-length mirror. The image that greets you is mesmerizing, a pastel powdered sylph draped in embroidered silks, crowned by blossoms and wreathed in every conceivable element. You look like the personification of a court festival, a whimsical deity birthed from the palace's most absurd whims. And yet, beneath the veneer, you're a dehydrated carcass of human flesh, longing for a single breath of unperfumed air. As dusk approaches, the chamber doors open to reveal the evening's pièce de résistance, the seasonal ball, themed Mad for May, though it's currently midsummer by any sensible calendar. You're headed into a hall hung with garlands of real flowers, roses, lilies, and honeysuckle, suspended from the ceiling. The scent is so thick you practically swim through it. Your outfit is a cascade of pale blue satin, off the shoulder to showcase that pastel-dusted décolletage, and your hoops are diamond-encrusted fans shaped like butterfly wings. To complete the look, a delicate circlet of dried daisies rests atop your pastel wig, petals brittle and crumbly at a single touch. You glide into the ballroom like a condemned man on parade. The orchestra strikes up a gracious gavotte, and the courtiers part before you like red seas. You approach Prince Archibald, who must feign astonishment at every turn. Such is his duty. You exchange pleasantries about the weather, the crops, and the new scandal involving the bishop's missing territory. All the while, your whale oil laced skin slides against the satin, and your corset creaks ominously with each breath. You clasp the prince's hand and he recoils slightly, either at your grip or the residual coral grit under your fingertips. You smile, understanding that nothing says royal court like polite discomfort masquerading as refinement. The dance begins. Despite your earlier minuet lessons, the ball's choreography is a dizzying montage of skips, bows, and spins meant to simulate fluttering butterflies. With every turn, pearls sewn into your bodice shift and prod your ribs, and the pastel powder sheds in clouds around you. Dancers gasp and cough in a sudden haze of mica and rice flour. Someone lightheartedly pats you on the back and accidentally dislodges a strand of hyacinth from your wig. It flops down onto your powdered shoulder like a floral dead leaf. You tuck it behind your ear. If a flower can survive that, you can survive anything. Mid-evening, the perfumer reappears with a handheld pooching cloth soaked in ambrosial amber to freshen your scent. You dab your wrists and neck as discreetly as possible, knowing that any overzealous puff risks extinguishing the nearby candles. Your pearls glint in the candlelight as you lift a tiny mirror to inspect your powdered complexion. Chips of ceruse from part 1 intermix with coral fragments and looped vermilion from part 3's blush, an abstract expressionist masterpiece. When the dance concludes, you're presented with the final token of the season, a small purse of sugared lavender buds. You slip it into your gown's pocket, knowing that in a few hours, the warmth of your body will release the scent, a parting gift of pastoral illusion. The courtiers bow, the prince smirks as though you've enchanted him, and you make your exit with every ounce of grace you can muster. Your gown rustles, your pearls tinkle, and your pastel dust trails behind you like a glittery tumbleweed. Back in your chambers, you finally collapse onto your chaise longue. You peel away the whale oil mask, or try to, and find your skin still slick with residue, which you rub vigorously with linen strips until your hands ache. You examine the pastel powders that have settled into every crease and pore. You remove the circlet of daisies, now entirely brown and crunchy, and toss them into the fire, watching them combust like a tiny bonfire of vanity. You sit in semi-darkness, breathing heavily, heart still pounding from the ball. The residual perfumes swirl around you like ghosts, and you realize you've spent another day draped in artifice so extreme it borders on self-annihilation. You sigh, sip lukewarm water, and reflect. Beauty in its seasonality is the grandest of illusions. You've weathered spring, summer, and autumn all in a single sun cycle, yet you feel older than 100 winters. As night deepens, the silence is your only luxury. You lay out your tools for tomorrow, a batch of ostrich feather dusters, a fresh jar of powdered alabaster, and a vial of autumn's ember hue for cheeks. You wonder if this ritual will ever end, or if you'll simply run out of flesh to paint. But then you remember, in court, renewal is mandatory. Each dawn brings fresh whims, fresh poisons, fresh tortures masquerading as enhancements. And so you steel yourself for day 4, when you'll endure Baroque hairstyling involving fragrant animal fetuses, gasp through a lecture on the virtues of powdered mummy, and, oh yes, submit to a vat of steaming hot sulfur baths under the guise of detoxification. But that, dear viewers, is a story for another morning. For now, savor the echo of our pastel odyssey and remember, royalty may wear the crown, but it's the beauty rituals that hold the true power, to charm, to kill, and to enthrall. See you tomorrow for part 4, where the nightmare only deepens, and the lead layer isn't the only thing that peels away. The sun has barely crested the horizon when you are jolted awake by a chorus of tinny harpsichord strains echoing through your gilded chamber. Today is the grand finale of your courtly transformation, a crescendo of Baroque hairstyling, mummy powder tutorials, and the notorious sulfur baths that promise rebirth at the cost of your sanity. You roll out of bed with every muscle protesting, tug at yesterday's corset remnants, and steel yourself for what promises to be the most elaborate, most excruciating beauty marathon of your life. First, the hair architect arrives bearing a contraption that resembles a miniature siege engine more than a styling tool. This morning's theme is Apotheosis of the Animal Kingdom, which translates to real animal fetuses, preserved in vials of formaldehyde, twisted into your towering coif. You watch in horrified fascination as your stylist secures a delicate fawn's ear atop your powdered wig, tucking it amongst loops of hair stiffened with sugar and chalk. Next comes the hedgehog fetus, its quills carefully fanned out like a grotesque halo. Your scalp tingles with cold dread as pin after pin is driven through the base of each specimen, anchoring them into the labyrinthine structure. One stray movement and you could impale yourself on a set of embryonic quills, but you dare not flinch. Perfection demands total stillness. While the stylus works, you feel minute fractures in your cerus resurfacing, sending stinging shards of dried lead into your pores. The room fills with a scent that can only be described as formaldehyde meets overripe garden. Sharp, cloying, and deeply unsettling. Courtiers gather around, murmuring appreciative sighs. They snap fans open and closed in unison, as though fanning the very idea of your misery into an art form. When the final fetus, an oversized swan embryo, clamps into place, your hair reaches a height that would make a cathedral jealous. You try to balance your weight, swaying like a top-heavy sculpture. Your heart hammers as you realize that one too vigorous curtsy could send you reeling into a potted plant, or worse, your stylist. With your animal menagerie in full display, you're led to the lecture hall for today's educational interlude, the virtues of powdered mummy. The royal alchemist stands beside two ornate urns, one brimming with fine sand-colored powder, the other containing coarser black shards. You're instructed to don a velvet mask, both to protect your identity and to keep your nose from flinching, to witness a live demonstration. The alchemist extols the purported benefits, that crushed Egyptian mummy fragments, rich in ancient dust and bile resin compounds, possess mystical regenerative powers when applied to the skin. You swallow reflexively, recalling that arsenic and mercury were labeled elixirs in previous experiments. Historical authenticity, it seems, trumps basic toxicity concerns. He scoops a pinch of the beige powder into a glass mortar and grinds it with a pestle while lecturing on the sacred origin of each fragment. The particles dance into the air, coating your velvet mask in an impromptu face mask. You cough into your sleeve, imagining every ancient pharaoh's curse swirling in the dust cloud. Next, he lights a brazier and tosses in the black shards, causing them to hiss and spark. "Observe the transformation," he proclaims grandly. A cloud of acrid smoke rises, and you glimpse fellow listeners flinching as the fragrance, equal parts burnt incense and moldering tomb, fills the air. Hands pressed to their throats, they look tragically noble, as if gagging were a courtly gesture. After the theatrical demonstration, you're handed a brush and instructed to apply the beige powder across your arms in décolletage. The coarse grains dig into your pores like 1,000 tiny chisels. You feel each ancient fragment with painful clarity, as though a legion of mummies were clawing at your skin. The alchemist nudges you to smear the black ash onto your temples and cheekbones for dimension. You comply, the ash smudging into your lead-white foundation like streaks of tar. The mirror reveals a visage both ludicrous and terrifying. Half pale queen, half vindictive pharaoh's curse incarnate. But the alchemist beams with satisfaction, declaring you the epitome of timeless beauty. Released from the chamber of curses, you stumble toward the music room where minstrels have convened. Today's soundtrack is a haunting dirge on the hurdy-gurdy, chosen to soothe the mind and strengthen the spirit before the sulfuric baptism. You're handed a bejeweled handkerchief soaked in lavender water, meant to mask the forthcoming stench. You sniff half-heartedly, curious whether a single whiff of lavender can truly compete with what awaits. The sulfur bath chamber is an antechamber bedecked in black marble and lit by iron sconces dripping with tallow candles. You descend a narrow set of steps into a stone tub filled with steaming yellow-green water that bubbles ominously. A brass ladle floats nearby. An attendant stand ready to ladle fresh brine over you. As you ease into the bath, escape seems impossible. Heavy curtains have been drawn, sealing the room in a haze of noxious gas. The water's temperature is so intense it feels like you're submerged in the core of a volcano. Bubbles erupt around your limbs, pinpricks of heat searing your skin. Immediately, the sulfurous fumes curl into your mouth and nostrils, and you cough violently, feeling the acid burn the back of your throat. One attendant douses your shoulders with another scoop of liquid, the sizzling hiss ringing in your ears like a battle cry. "Breathe slowly," whispers the attendant, a phrase you know to be futile. Every breath stabs you like a hot dagger. Your lungs spasm and you choke, but your captors simply watch, eyes sympathetic but unmoved. The chamber's walls vibrate with the hurdy-gurdy's mournful drone, echoing your internal agony. After what feels like an eternity, though in reality a mere 15 minutes, you're hauled out of the bath. Your skin is red and blistered, a topographical map of medieval sanctioned torture. Attendants wrap you in linen bandages soaked in a cooling ointment of aloe and crushed mint, which stings as it cools. You shiver uncontrollably, the contrast between burning flesh and chilling compress, jolting every nerve. Yet they declare you refreshed and revitalized, praising your fortitude as if you've crossed the Rubicon on blistered feet. Next, you're bundled into a robe embroidered with phoenix motifs, because of course you must rise from death itself as a symbol of rebirth. Each embroidered feather prickles against your salt-stung arms, and you can't help but laugh, a hollow, pain-marinated giggle, at the absurdity of symbolically embodying renewal after such torment. Courtiers peer in, applauding your resilience and remarking how you've never looked more resplendent in renewal. The day's final act is a private viewing with the queen herself. You're escorted to the inner sanctum, where daylight filters through stained glass windows, casting kaleidoscopic patterns on the marble floor. You step forward, dizzy from smoke, heat, and the weight of fetuses in your hair. The queen sits upon her throne, regal and expectant. She studies you through narrowed eyes, her expression inscrutable. Having endured 4 days of lethal beauty rituals, you stand before her like a battered trophy, a testament to vanity's conquering cruelty. You have borne the weight of past, present, and future splendor, she intones, voice smooth as polished ivory. Your sacrifice honors the legacy of our realm. You curtsy, hips creaking, heart pounding so fiercely you worry it might rupture your corset bones. You muster a smile that strains every sinew, praying your lead-stained lips don't crack in the effort. The queen nods, satisfied, before dismissing you with a wave. You melt into the polished corridors, footsteps echoing against the marble like distant thunder. Retreating to your private chamber, you collapse onto your fainting couch, a misnomer if there ever was one, since your couch offers no relief. You extract the linen bandages and marvel at the fresh welts beneath. You gingerly unfasten the fetuses clinging to your hair, discarding each into a silver basin. They look almost peaceful now, their formaldehyde sheen dulled by hours of noble torment. You drop them into a brazier and watch them burn, their tiny cries swallowed by the roar of flame. The scent of charred animal mingle with residual sulfur, and you gasp at the perverse finale of your 4-day odyssey. Your final task is to remove the powdered mummy and lead paint from your skin, a process that involves rubbing your face with linen strips dipped in wine vinegar, followed by a scrub of oatmeal, honey, and, inevitably, more crushed pearls. Each swipe dislodges scabs of ceruse, powdered bone, and coral grit, revealing raw flesh that aches with every millimeter of exposed nerve. You pause to press a cool flask of rose water against your cheek, savoring the fleeting relief as petals flutter across your skin. As night deepens, you finally slip into bed, body aching, lungs wheezing, and scalp prickling as though ghostly quills still cling to your pores. You draw the canopy shut, muffling the distant echo of courtly music and whispered gossip. In the silence, you reflect on a week that has beaten your body into a canvas for every conceivable barbarity disguised as beauty. You realize that surviving royal beauty routines isn't about strength or elegance. It's about accepting that vanity is a parasitic sovereign, demanding surrender of flesh, mind, and breath. You have endured animal fetuses wired to your skull, inhaled the dust of long-dead pharaohs, and simmered in volcanic waters that could strip flesh from bone. You have emerged not as a radiant paragon, but as a living reliquary of aristocratic extremes. Your final thought, before the weight of exhaustion drags you into unconsciousness, is a bittersweet affirmation. Modern makeup brushes and chilled cucumbers have nothing on this. If you could choose, you'd gladly trade 1,000 spa days for a single moment of unpainted, unfettered, unperfumed breath. But in this court, such heresy is unthinkable. Tomorrow, the powdered wigs and perfumed torture will begin anew for the next hopeful noble. As for you, you will rise again at dawn, because once you've tasted the crown, even through gritted teeth and blistered lungs, escape is no longer an option. You are royalty after all, and within these walls, beauty is the most beautiful lie ever told. Imagine smearing on a flawless white mask that slowly seeps poisonous lead into your veins, each brush stroke a silent kiss of death. Your cheeks glow like ivory, but beneath that porcelain veneer, your organs cry out for mercy. Welcome to the Tudor beauty bargain. Flawless complexion today, fatal malady tomorrow. Before you even reach for the brush, you're enveloped in an aura of obsession. Elizabeth's court demanded a face so pale it could blind candles, a stark contrast to the natural health glows of the common folk. To achieve this alabaster perfection, court apothecaries blended white lead, called Venetian ceruse, with vinegar and sometimes even goat's milk. The result? A creamy paste with the consistency of heavy cream and the toxicity of rat poison. Women applied it liberally, every morning ritualized like a sacred sacrament, with no idea that each application was corroding bone tissue from within. As you spread the lead mixture across your cheeks, forehead, and chin, you're told it hides blemishes, freckles, and even the faintest blush of youth, that telltale sign of vitality deemed unseemly in royalty. Yet every dab releases microscopic lead particles sinking through pores straight into your bloodstream. Within weeks, your gums bleed, teeth loosen, and your hair thins. Courtiers whisper of pale ladies who collapse mid-dance, their faces cracking like old plaster. But in Elizabeth's realm, the beauty price is non-negotiable. Perfection must outweigh survival. Once your face hardens into an ivory mask, another layer of peril awaits. Eyebrows. Elizabeth famously shaved hers off completely, replacing those unruly arches with painted-on lines of charcoal or antimony. This wasn't mere fashion, it was a declaration of sovereign uniqueness. To darken those bare slates, barbers dipped quills into soot or crushed stibnite, antimony sulfide, painting narrow arched strokes. Antimony, like lead, is a heavy metal. Applied daily, its vapors induce headaches, vomiting, and even episodes of madness. Yet every stroke insists, a queen's face must be a canvas of power, no matter the cost. When your face gleams like a marble statue, and your brows sweep into dramatic arcs, the final act is a crimson pout. Forget gentle rose-tinted balms. Elizabeth's lip color was a concoction of red lead mixed with water. This pigment promised a devil-may-care flush, provocative, commanding, utterly royal, and utterly poisonous. Women sealed their lips together over and over, trapping flakes of oxidized lead against their skin. Soon, they'd experience ulcers, infections, and a chronic metallic taste that lingered, reminders of beauty's betrayal. Now picture the daily routine. You begin by scouring your face with bread and rose water, hoping to remove yesterday's poison. Foolish. The ceruse won't budge without a harsh wash of even stronger vinegar or wine, both of which irritate skin and widen pores, making you desperate for more ceruse to cover the damage. It's a vicious, toxic loop. Morning light finds you hunched over a silver basin, blotting paste, painting brows, applying pigment, all under the watchful eye of the Queen's lady-in-waiting. Every misstep invites rebuke, or worse, the Queen's icy glare. Yet, despite the agony, courtiers vied for Elizabeth's favor by mimicking her ghostly visage. Portraits immortalized that ghost queen glow, and any deviation marked a courtier as improper, perhaps even rebellious. Rumors circulated of ladies whose jawbones ached from bone degeneration, their lips blackened from ulcerations, their minds dulled by chronic poisoning. But loyalty demanded the facade. To be seen was to belong, and belonging meant surviving the slow march of lead-induced decay. By midday, your face is a brittle mask. Tiny cracks form at mouth corners, revealing the raw, inflamed flesh beneath. A simple smile is now a gamble. One wrong move and the paste flakes cascade to the ground like porcelain snow. You adjust your posture, tilt your head just so, and pray the court artist captures you in your most flattering angle. After all, a queen's favorite portrait could elevate a lady to unmatched prestige, or condemn her to irrelevance if her beauty fell short. As evening approaches, exhaustion sets in. Your blood brims with heavy metals, your breath tastes of vinegar and death. You peel off the ceruse with linen cloths soaked in milk and barley water, only to expose red, seeping skin that begs for relief. But relief is fleeting. Tomorrow's dawn heralds another coat of poison, another day of silent self-sacrifice. Because in Elizabeth's England, beauty wasn't just an adornment, it was a weapon, wielded at the expense of life itself. And so ends part 1 of our journey through Tudor terror, where each brushstroke could be your last. Stay tuned for part 2, where we delve into the secret perfumes and powders that rendered courtiers both irresistible and irrevocably doomed. The moment the lead crust settles and your skin aches from the morning's exfoliation by vinegar, a new specter appears at your chamber door, the apothecary's apprentice, bearing a tray of perfumes and powders so exotic they require a separate courier for each vial. Today's mission, to cloak your toxic visage in an olfactory illusion that whispers of blossoms, far-off spices, and hidden dangers. You breathe deeply, immediately regretting it, and steel yourself for the most fragrant chapter of Tudor torture. First comes the powder of autumn and musk, sourced from the anal gland of a civet cat so rare that a single ounce commands more gold than your dowry. You tip a pinch into your palm, the dust so fine it billows upward like the ghost of a fallen rose. You dab it at your temples, cheeks, and throat, the particles clinging to the residual ceruse like moths to candlelight. The musk smells like damp animal fur rolling in flower petals, an extravagance both heady and nauseating. Courtiers bow as you pass, clutching handkerchiefs to their noses, torn between admiration and the urge to flee. No time to apologize for your barbaric scent profile. Next is the spiced sultana blend, a concoction of cinnamon, nutmeg, and ground ambergris sourced from the belly of a sperm whale. Ambergris, in case you've never read the footnotes of a maritime bestseller, is whale vomit, somehow elevated to luxury status after floating around in salt water for centuries. You swirl a drop on each wrist. Immediately, your pulse points burn with a heat that rivals the spice trade's fiercest deals. You cough delicately, hoping no one notices the tears that spring from your eyes, part agony, part allergic reaction. With your aura now a symphony of roasted cetacean chunks and exotic bark, the apprentice presents frosted lilac dust, ground from petals frozen at dawn in the royal greenhouse. You pat the lavender-tinged powder onto your shoulders, where it intermingles with lead flakes from your ceruse. The result is like watching an apothecary's snow globe in miniature. Tiny crystals drift downward, each promising frost-kissed spring in mild frostbite. The scent is so sweet it borders on cloying, like a sugar cartel masquerading as a perfume house. Before you can recover, the third act arrives, the forbidden rosewater elixir, bottled in hand-blown crystal that glitters in candlelight. A single spray at the neck is enough to send you into paroxysms of coughing and tears. It's rumored the queen herself commissioned this blend after reading about rosewater cures in an Arabian manuscript, and certainly didn't mention the component of unresolved arsenic residues from the distillation process. You realize too late that your face is now an olfactory battleground, civet versus cinnamon versus petals preserved in heavy metal. A courtier approaches, face contorted. You must smile, quietly, carefully, lest you offend the perfumed gods. With the scent competition concluded, you move on to another necessity, face patches. These small squares of cloth soaked in tonics promising miraculous effects are applied to cheeks, chin, and forehead. The mummy's kiss patch is first rumored to contain powdered Egyptian curses and literally a pinch of ancient embalming spices. You press it to your jaw, and almost immediately feel a tingle, like dozens of tiny pharaohs dancing the jig on your cheekbones. The itching is maddening, but you dare not remove the patch until the court's appointed time, lest you incur the wrath of the queen's lady-in-waiting. The gooseberry glow patch follows, soaked in a liquid that tastes suspiciously resonant of rotten green fruit. You dab it to your temples and must fight the urge to scratch. The patch grows warm, spreading gooseberry essence into your pores, leaving a sticky sheen that catches stray coral powder like a fly trap. Rumor has it that a duchess once wore these patches for an entire fortnight, emerging with the complexion of an undercooked gooseberry pie and the panic-induced tremors of someone who just ingested half a tree. Yet here you stand, determined to outdo her. Between patches, you're required to breathe through a Cleopatra's chamber, a small tent hung over your bedpost, within which smoke from burning frankincense and myrrh wafts continuously. You're told it relaxes facial muscles, preventing smile lines, an ironic recommendation since it leaves your lungs feeling like scorched parchment. You attempt a yawn, only to realize your jaw is still partially immobilized by yesterday's regimens. Instead, you settle for a half smile, watching the smoke swirl around your powdered head like an incense halo, a fitting tribute to mummified monarchs. As midday approaches, you labor to keep your composure while sipping lavender-infused iced rosewater, an indulgence so rare it's served in a goblet of Venetian glass, hand-painted with your personal coat of arms. In truth, the drink tastes like diluted mouthwash with hints of sadness, but you sip it with regal aplomb, knowing that any sign of distaste might brand you as a commoner, an unforgivable offense. Every eye in the great hall watches you, and you must appear effortlessly composed, despite the lead marching through your veins like an invasive army. Post-luncheon, the chamber doors swing open to reveal the day's grand finale. The dyeing of your gown with Tudor scarlet, the most precious textile tint in all England, derived from crushed Kermes beetles shipped from Aragon. A separate specialist manipulates each fold and hem, ensuring the color clings uniformly. You stand motionless as the chromatic alchemist works, aware that the dye's acidity will bleed through your chemise and leave your skin stained a permanent, unnerving crimson. You feel as though you're wearing a living, breathing wound, yet you must nod politely when a courtier admires the depth of your hue. By afternoon, you drift back to your vanity for one last touch-up, radiant pearl tint. Tiny beads of crushed pearls are suspended in a paste and carefully dabbed onto your forehead, collarbones, and the tops of your shoulders. Each fleck glimmers like the promise of hope in a sea of medieval misery. If you can overlook the excruciating scraping sensation as the powder is forced into your pores, you attempt to laugh off the pain when the court jeweler gasps at your radiance, but a cough interrupts your performance, sending a miniature avalanche of pearl dust across the crimson hem of your gown. As dusk settles, you are led to the Royal Gallery for a formal review. As you glide between rows of onlookers, your scent leaves a trail so complex it requires a glossary, a sort of olfactory epic poem. Musky undertones segue into spicy crescendos, only to conclude with a lingering, unplaceable note of ancient spores. Guests inhale deeply, then either swoon in admiration or retch in confusion. You smile through it all, head held high, every step a delicate ballet between suffering and spectacle. When the review concludes, you're expected to offer a few words, crafted perfectly to convey humility, authority, and glowing health. Your tongue is stiff from the day's potions, but you manage to recite a graceful thank you that earns polite applause. You curtsy deeply, your skirt swishes a final plume of scarlet and pearl, and a hush falls. In that moment, you're both the spoils of victory and the victim of triumph, a living allegory of the Queen's power to sculpt life and death with the stroke of a brush. Retreating to your private apartments, you remove layers of poison-laden powders, aromatic pastes, and patches. Each cloth you peel away reveals angry red skin, tiny eruptions, and traces of yesterday's blush. You fling them into a brazier, watching them burn in a toxic ballet of smoke and ash. One last performance before night's curtain falls. You bathe in a modest basin of cool spring water, hoping to wash away the day's chemical warfare. But the water darkens with lead residue, swirling like a silty marsh. As you towel off, you reflect on the day's odyssey, a whirlwind of scents, dyes, and powders so opulent they masked a ticking biological time bomb. Queen Elizabeth's court demanded a visage of ethereal perfection, and courtiers scrambled to replicate her lethal allure. You realize that each lingering fragrance, each stubborn stain on your nightdress, is a trophy of survival, a testament to humanity's willingness to suffer for beauty. You lie in bed, weary beyond mortal comprehension, every breath a reminder of the heavy metals coursing through you. Yet you know that tomorrow, the dance begins anew. More powders, more perfumes, more poisonous rituals. For in the world of Tudor splendor, the pursuit of beauty is the grandest atrocity of all, an exquisite cruelty crowned with jewels and perfumed with oblivion. And so, you close your eyes, heart pounding with both dread and anticipation, ready to do it all again. By dawn on day 3, your eyelids flutter like grim crows, tired, heavy, and dusted with yesterday's bullion of pearl fragments. Before the court even stirs, you're summoned for the complexion calibration, a ceremony so meticulous it rivals the daily sermon. A team of 6 apothecaries, 2 with brushes, 2 with sponges, and 2 wielding tiny surgical blades, surrounds you. Their mission: shave away the slightest imperfection in your lid mask, then re-reline the edges with fresh ceruse. As a shaving blade hisses across your temple, you gasp at the sting, deadening nerve endings screaming beneath the ice-cold metal. By the time they finish, you're a living jigsaw puzzle, each seam as sharp as a cathedral's stained glass lead. With your mask perfectly realigned, you're led to the ocular harmonization table. Here, pigments of copper, cobalt, and verdigris await, each intended to shade your eyelids in a hue befitting a warrior queen. The chief colorist dabs a pin-cushion soft applicator into a pot of turquoise powder, pressing it into your crease. As the metal dust settles, you feel the telltale tingle of mild poisoning. Your eyes water uncontrollably, but the artist merely pats your cheek. Such tears add depth to your gaze. You blink until your lids stick, then a court attendant pries them open with slender ivory rods. You swallow against the urge to vomit. Once your eyelids gleam like peacock feathers, it's time for the crimson crown, a ritual devoted to the queen's signature red lip. The lipstick stick, crafted from beeswax, red lead, and crushed madder root, glows like embers. You press it to your lips, and it melts into a paste that crisps into a lacquered sheen. Each layer seals in metallic undertones that taste of blood and clay. As you apply, you feel your lips swell slightly, an allergic reaction the court deems passion's bloom. You bite your lower lip to test the color's permanence, inadvertently catching a wispy hair with your teeth. You tug it free and wince. The hair pulls a droplet of rouge from your lip, leaving a scarlet teardrop that slides to your chin. Morning's horrors behind you, you stroll into the courtyard for dew of the seraglio, an irrigation of rosewater mixed with sour milk and ground arsenic. Servants hold silver basins beneath dripping rose petals. You move from basin to basin, tilting your head so that the scented liquid streams over your hair and shoulders. Each droplet sends a spike of vertigo through your skull, but the perfume cascade leaves your skin glistening as though kissed by dawn itself. Courtiers halt in mid-gossip to admire the illusion of youth glowing on your cheeks, unaware they're praising a face slowly corroded from within. By midday, your stomach rumbles, not for food, but for abrasive tonics. The mercurial elixir arrives, a concoction of mercury, honey, and white wine. You clutch the goblet as though it were a chalice of salvation, but the first sip ignites your throat in fire. Your teeth rattle, and the honey sweetness curdles on your tongue. You swallow again, steeling yourself, and down the rest in a single draught. The attendant records your pulse on a silver register and nods approvingly. A steady heart indicates good tolerance. You force a smile as your mouth spasms. Lunch is a display of culinary pageantry. Roasted bustard stuffed with marzipan, peacock's tongue in a saffron broth, and candied daisies glazed in honey. You lift each morsel with ruby-encrusted forks, nibbling delicately to avoid dislodging flakes of ceruse. A single crumb caught in yesterday's eyebrow, char could spark scandal. The queen's envoy plucks a stray breadcrumb from your forehead and annexes it as a souvenir, proof of your unwavering devotion. Afternoon brings portraiture in pastel with the royal painter, whose workshop resembles a torture chamber of pigments. He instructs you to sit motionless on a lacquered stool, back arched, eyes fixed on a single candle flame. Every minute he mixes fresh pastel sticks, chalk ground with lead, arsenic, and egg white, until he finds your signature shade of pale rose. As he sweeps the pastel across your cheeks, you feel microscopic abrasions, each stroke scratching away both epidermis and dignity. When he declares the hue too warm, he wipes your face clean with a rag drenched in vinegar and starts anew. Hours later, your face resembles a chalk quarry, dusty, cracked, and perfectly tuned to the queen's edict. Released at last, you stagger into the gallery for Perfumes, a demonstration by the court's master perfumer. He unveils a new essence derived from white hellebore and jasmine distilled over smoldering human bones. The vial's stopper clicks ominously as you raise it to your nose. The first inhale is a rush of floral sweetness, then a wave of nausea so fierce you nearly collapse. The perfumer drags you upright and insists you inhale 3 more times for full maturation. Each breath sows tiny numbness in your brain's corners, but you stand tall, knowing that mortals tremble before a scent so rare and so lethal. As dusk nears, the ceremonial canopy walk commences. Draped in a hooded cloak embroidered with the Tudor rose, you proceed beneath a silk canopy held aloft by 8 footmen. The canopy, dusted with a fine layer of powdered alum to guard against mildew, sheds a cloud of white as you stride. The effect is ghostly. Candlelight flickers on your painted visage as though you glide between worlds. Onlookers bow deeply, some crossing themselves, uncertain whether they witness royalty or revenant. Dinner follows in the great hall, where you recline on a dais next to the queen's envoy. Platters laden with spiced venison, candied quail, and decadent tarts arrive. You eat sparingly, fearing the steel greaves of your corset will burst open under the weight of indigestion. A court physician hovers with a goblet of antidotal cordial, a mixture of plantains, gentian root, and a single grain of calomel. You sip it gingerly, hoping it will counteract the morning's poison cocktail. Instead, your throat clenches and your pulse flutters, but the doctor applauds your bravery. Night settles, but your torments are far from over. The midnight renewal chamber awaits. A small bath of distilled violet water heated with powdered arsenic to invigorate the senses. You descend the ladder into the tub, the oily water tasting faintly of metal. A servant pours a cupful of the violet bath over your shoulders, saying, "Feel the venom wake your spirit." You shiver as the bathwater sends shockwaves through your spine. The alcove is lit by phosphorescent mushrooms cultivated in the Royal Conservatory, casting your pale form in eerie green tones. You sink beneath the surface, imagining your veins as silver aqueducts, delivering poison to every organ. Finally, you ascend, dripping with floral toxin, and are swathed in a robe of finest silk, embroidered with silver thread so stiff it feels like armor. You slip into your canopied bed, every muscle quivering from the day's chemical onslaught. Your final meditation before sleep. Tomorrow you will rise again, your body a battleground for cosmetics and caskets, for alabaster dreams and arsenic realities. But until dawn, you cling to one small comfort, the faint hope that, in seeking a portrait of immortal beauty, you haven't already become a ghost. As dawn breaks on the final act of our deadly beauty saga, you awake to the hollow call of a lone raven perched on your windowsill, a fitting herald for day 4 of Elizabethan cosmetic carnage. Your body feels like a warped canvas, layers of lead crust, coral scars, and pearl abrasions mapped across your skin. Today's agenda is the culmination of every poisonous practice, the ritual of the silver bath, the coronation wig infusion, and the grand finale mass that promises eternal radiance, or a one-way ticket to the grave. You rise, muscles trembling, and steel yourself for the last descent into Tudor torture. First, you shuffle to the antechamber where massive silver bowls glint ominously in the candlelight. These vessels are reserved for the lustral silver bath, a ceremonial immersion believed to banish impurities and invigorate the soul. In truth, they contain water infused with finely powdered silver, an element thought to purge toxins, but in practice a relentless irritant. Servants ladle the near-freezing liquid into a marble claw-foot tub, their breath clouding in the chill. You disrobe, wincing as metal shards from yesterday's jewelry embedded themselves in your skin. You step into the bath and your joints protest like ancient hinges. The water is so cold it steals your breath, and every hair on your body stands erect as if warning you to flee. Yet you remain, chin lifted as servants swirl the silvered water around you, chanting archaic blessings meant to sanctify your sacrifice. Each droplet seems to whisper, "Soon, your veins will glint with metal until you're no more." Emerging from the lustral ordeal, you wrap yourself in a robe of stiff damask that cracks like dried bones at every movement. The chill still clings to your skin, making you shudder as you're guided to the coronation wig infusion chamber. Here, barbers and apothecaries conspire to create your masterpiece wig. Today's theme, eternal sovereignty. The base is an enormous horsehair structure, reinforced with bone laths and cocooned in pale satin. But the true terror arrives when the perfumer enters, bearing vials of distilled myrrh and powdered mummy dust. He injects these substances into the wig's hollow core via slender glass tubes, ensuring your hairpiece exudes an aura of death and divinity. You watch in horror as the mummy dust settles among the curls, each flake a relic of ancient embalming rites. Myrrh drips through the strands, lending a sticky sheen that clings to your temples. The scent is a heady blend of incense and tomb, fitting for a queen who reigns over both life and death. Next, the wig is lavishly decorated with silver filigree and miniature crowns, each set with tiny amethysts. It perches atop your head like a diadem of doom. As the stylists secure it with pins, you feel pins press into your skull, each one a pinpoint reminder that vanity can bore through bone. A final spritz of stagnant court air solidifies the infusion, sealing the wig's lethal perfume into every fiber. You lift your chin, and for a moment you see yourself in a gilt mirror, a towering edifice of hair crowned by symbols of power, yet beneath that grandeur lies the husk of a human being. Released from the chamber, you're escorted to the courtiers' review hall, where everyone from earls to scullery maids awaits your appearance. They line the corridors, whispering marvels about the queen's living monument. You must walk slowly, deliberately, to give them time to admire your form. Each step is agony. The wig weighs more than your head, the damask robe restricts your hips, and a faint trace of silver soaks through the seams. pricking your skin with metallic grit. Still, you proceed with regal poise, smile painted on, eyes shimmering from last night's violet baths. By mid-morning, the focus shifts to your hands, a lesser-known battlefield in this beauty war. The ivory glove application demands that your alabaster paleness extend to every fingertip. Gloves of fine, untreated kid leather are placed in a vat of milk and lemon juice, then slipped onto your hands. The acid in the mixture brightens the glove's color but also leaches moisture from your skin, leaving your fingers dry, cracked, and raw. You flex your hands experimentally, only to find each joint stiff and painful, as though the very bones have calcified. A lady-in-waiting emerges with a heap of crushed pearls, tapping them into the glove's leather walls so that every movement shimmers. As you lift your hand, the pearls shift inside the gloves, grinding against your knuckles like miniature grinders. You try to flex your fingers once more and nearly weep. After this, it's time for the Tincture of Youth lecture, delivered by the court's senior alchemist in the Grand Library. You're seated on a velvet-covered stool, your face encrusted with yesterday's pastel dust and lead seams sharpened to perfection. The alchemist extols the virtues of his new formula, a blend of mercury, powdered unicorn horn, actually just deer antler, and crimson botanical extracts. He waves a vial under your nose, and the fumes slither down your throat like serpents. He encourages you to sip just enough to enliven the spirit. You oblige, feeling your jaw tremble as the metallic brew scorches your esophagus. Across the room, a nobleman clutches his throat, eyes watering, but the alchemist dismisses it as an oversensitive constitution. You swallow again, your pulse racing like a war drum. Luncheon is a sparse affair, a mere plate of stewed apples and honeyed bread to prevent stains on your ceruse. You eat with gloved hands, mindful that even a trace of jelly could spark a scandal. The sweetness lingers on your tongue like a promise of treat turned treason. You finish quickly, eager to move on to the penultimate ritual, the grand finale mask. The masking chamber is dimly lit, incense smoke curling in lazy spirals. Center stage hangs a silk banner painted with the Queen's motto, Vita ut vivas, see that you live. It seems a cruel joke. At its base lies the mask, a solid silver visage molded to your features, hollowed out to cradle your face. Apothecaries have adorned it with powdered gemstones, lapis lazuli for wisdom, emerald dust for health, and crimson jasper for valor. Yet the mask's inner surface is coated with a fine layer of toxic cinnabar, a mercury sulfide compound that gleams like fresh blood. Gently now, coaxes the chief alchemist as you tilt your head forward. Two attendants slip the mask over your face, aligning eye slits with your gaze. The cinnabar lining presses against your skin, releasing invisible particles that seep into every contour of your face. You can barely breathe, your lungs strain for air as the mask seals you into your own coffin. A final engraving tool etches the royal insignia across your forehead, each stroke pressing the mercury deeper. You hear the metal resonate, a dull, echoing sound like your own heartbeat. When the mask is secure, the attendants lock it in place with metal clasps that bite into your cheeks. For a moment, the world falls away. You exist behind a wall of silver, senses dulled by the mercury haze. Courtiers applaud your endurance, their claps muffled by your metal barrier. You want to scream, but your voice is trapped in the mask's echo chamber. The very breath you draw tastes of mercury and rust. Yet here, in this living censorship, you are the epitome of Elizabethan beauty, immovable, impenetrable, and eternally lethal. Time warps. You endure hours behind the mask, forced to perform gestures of greeting, ritual bows, and even a short recitation of the Queen's latest proclamation. Each movement rattles the mask against your teeth, sending jolts of pain through your skull. Your eyes tear, but the tears pool behind the silver, visible only as shimmering rivulets at your chin. Courtiers interpret these as silent tokens of piety, tears shed for the glory of the realm. Finally, twilight looms, and at last the mask is lifted. You stagger forward, as though emerging from a tomb. Your skin beneath is a mosaic of red welts and silver stains. The cinnabar has etched tiny pustules along your temples. You touch your face gingerly, feeling the raw edges, and taste the faint tang of metal on your fingertips. The final act is the radiant departure. Courtiers gather in the painted gallery, clutching torches that cast flickering halos on ancient tapestries. You are carried aloft on a sedan chair, draped in black velvet trimmed with silver thread. The silent procession moves through the palace corridors, every footfall a reminder of mortality's march. You look out from your chair and see a sea of faces, some awed, some pitying, all complicit in this grand theater of vanity. As you pass beneath the arched doorway of your private suite, the sedans halt. You are lowered gently and offered a goblet of rose water infused with camphor, a final hope of solace. You sip and are rewarded with a sharp sting that brings you fully back to your body. You steady yourself, then ascend the steps to your bedchamber, each movement accompanied by the soft jingle of pearls still clinging to your gloves and gown. Once inside, you remove the silver bathrobe and kit yourself for slumber. The damask gown is slipped off first, leaving a trail of silver flakes in its wake. The coronation wig, now cold and heavy, is eased from your head, taking several strands of hair with it. You discard it into a brazier, watching the myrrh-soaked curls collapse and crackle in flame. The red glow reflects off the walls, casting dancing shadows that resemble the screams of the dead. Next comes the silver mask, clasp by excruciating clasp. When the final latch releases, the silver plate falls away and thuds against the plush carpet. You stare at the tarnished metal for a moment before tossing it aside. Your breath catches as you see the raw, angry map that was once your face. You gently press your palms to your cheeks, willing the swelling to subside. At long last, you slip between cool sheets, your body aching at every hair follicle. You close your eyes, heart hammering from the day's relentless torment. Yet there's a flicker of triumph. You have survived the grandest, most grotesque pageant of beauty ever devised. Your skin is a ledger of sacrifice, your memories a testament to vanity's cruel edicts. But you have reclaimed something precious, a night of unfettered stillness, where no brushstroke or toxin can touch you. As sleep finally claims you, you vow that when dawn returns, you will greet it without ceruse, without mercury, and without the weight of a silver mask. For this night at least you will be free, free of crowns, free of poisons, and free to breathe unfiltered air. In the silent darkness, you find solace in one immutable truth. No amount of painted perfection can conquer the human spirit's quest for genuine life. And that, dear viewers, is the ultimate beauty, a radiance no toxic powder or metallic mask can ever steal. Picture a world where a single dab of cosmetic could rot your teeth, blind your eyes, or send you plummeting into delirium, all in the name of looking like fragile porcelain. Welcome to the 18th century, where pale skin was currency, and your complexion could cost you everything. The morning ritual begins before sunrise, in a pale chamber only lit by flickering tallow candles, because sunlight is for peasants and your nobility. You lie on a chaise longue, head cradled by a satin pillow, as two attendants bustle about with trays of powders, potions, and poultices. Your first sacrament is the ceruse poultice, a mud-like paste of white lead and vinegar, whipped until velvety smooth. It promises an ethereal glow, but the truth is grim. Each application seals microscopic lead fragments into your pores, seeping into your bloodstream as quietly as a serpent in the grass. You brace yourself as the assistant presses the paste onto your cheeks and forehead, smoothing it like icing on a cake. Your skin immediately tightens, your nostrils flare at the pungent odor of acetic acid, and you feel a distant hum at the base of your skull, an early whisper of lead poisoning. Once your face gleams frost white, attention shifts to those troublesome freckles and blemishes, the marks of outdoor labor, scandalous in polite society. You recline backward as a second assistant brandishes a half-broken mirror and a chalice of complexion water, a noxious tonic brewed from rose petals steeped in sour milk and dissolved calcium oxide. You tip your head and the liquid drips down your cheeks. It stings like 1,000 tiny needles, dissolving old ceruse and exfoliating your flesh. You cough, your throat burning, but the assistant clucks in approval. Your pores are now wide open, ready to receive yet another coat of poison. Layer by layer, the white paste returns, thicker this time, a second, third, fourth coat until your face is a brittle mask. The assistants tap and buff between each application, chiseling away lumps, shaping your visage into the season's ideal. An oh-so-refined oval, unblemished and lifeless. You close your eyes and imagine a modern spa bath, jasmine steam, ambient music. But instead, you endure the smell of fermenting milk and metal, the sensation of your skin gasping for air beneath the lethal cake. But aristocratic beauty is never one-dimensional. You must also appear naturally flushed, delicately rosy, as though you fainted at the sight of scandalous gossip. For this, the pommade rouge awaits, red lead mixed with lard and crushed beetroot. You resist the urge to gag as the colorist dabs the paste onto your cheeks with a goose-feather brush. Each stroke introduces more lead into your system, a toxic tango of crimson and decay. Tiny droplets catch in your eyebrow hairs and settle into the creases around your nose, where they will linger until the next merciless cleansing. With cheeks set ablaze, it's time for the famed arsenic wafers, thin, brittle lozenges of arsenic trioxide blended with starch and honey. They promise a milky complexion and a radiant sheen, an inner glow that seeps outward. You place one wafer on your tongue. It tastes chalky and metallic, slipping past your molars like a grain of sand. Swallowing feels like downing a pinch of gunpowder. Moments later, a chill rattles through your bones, your pulse thunders, and your vision flutters at the edges. You brace against the chaise, grasping the arms as wave-like nausea threatens to pull you under. Yet it passes quickly, leaving your skin so pale it could blind a candle's flame. You smile, weakly, and whisper thanks, knowing each wafer is a gamble with mortality. Hair comes next, elaborate poofs that defy gravity, engineering feats requiring padding, pomade, and occasional rat skins for volume. You settle onto a high-backed stool as the hairdresser applies a stiff, grease-filled compound to your scalp, a mixture of animal fat, tallow, and aromatic herbs. It glues hair extensions in place, and as you sit, you can feel your scalp protesting under the weight of centuries of powdered starch. The hairdresser wends false hair around wire frames, creating a towering structure adorned with miniature ships, garlands of silk flowers, and a flock of live birds, if your fortune permits. A single sneeze could send avian chaos through the salon. You close your eyes and pray for calm. Once your poof is assembled, complete with fragile lace veils and ribbons that unite the whole ensemble, you're nearly ready for court. Yet no noblewoman leaves her chambers without a final cloud of fragrance. The perfumer arrives with vials of amphoralis, distilled from musk, ambergris, and the essence of exotic woods. You lean forward as he spritzes the scented particles onto your neck and wrists. The perfume coats your ceruse mask and drifts around you like a ghostly veil. You inhale, deeply, and catch a backdraft of stale tallow and animal fat. You cough twice, but the perfumer murmurs fervent praise. No one can resist your allure. Dressed at last in layers of silk, brocade, and lace, each garment pre-whitened with starch and chalk, you stumble toward the grand mirror. Your reflection stares back, a porcelain statue draped in finery, your eyes wide behind powdered lids. You barely recognize the woman who emerged from last night's bedchamber, pale and breathless. You almost miss the tiny cracks forming in your ceruse mask, the flaking paste falling like brittle snow onto your embroidered bodice. If you lean too far forward, you risk a plaster collapse. But to stand perfectly still is to tempt faintness, so you practice the perfect posture, chest lifted, chin raised, shoulders relaxed, in preparation for the court's debut. At breakfast service, courtiers file in, whispering compliments and attempting discreet cooing impressions of the alabaster countenance. A gentleman offers you a silver cup of weak tea. You sip carefully, lest the hot liquid soften the ceruse at your mouth's edges, revealing crimson gouges of raw flesh. You nod graciously, smiling with lips stiffened by lead, so that only the faintest crease at the corners of your mouth suggests warmth. Outside, the sun glares, and you dare not step into its unforgiving rays. A lady's coach is prepared, lined with silk and tinted windows to shield you from daylight's vulgar glare. As you travel, courtiers wave fans, not to cool you, but to diffuse the toxic fumes radiating from your complexion. You imagine modern air conditioning, gentle breezes, filtered air, but instead endure pungent currents of vinegar, perfumed grease, and chemical cocktails. Every inhalation is a gamble, every exhalation a plume of perfume. At court, the grand hall bustles with aristocratic pageantry. You descend from the coach, supported by attendants who guide you across the marble floor. Chandeliers overhead reflect your whitened face back at you a dozen times, an echo of your self-inflicted mortality. Courtiers bow and curtsy, marveling at your rarefied hue. One nobleman dares to joke that your face is so white, he fears he may break it with a stray compliment. Laughter ripples around you, nervous, reverent, tinged with unease. You incline your head, feeling the lead pinch at your jaw, and attempt a polite laugh, which cracks like stale plaster. The monarch appears upon the dais, her own complexion and imperial standard. You approach, knees bent, back straight, heart pounding. She gazes upon you with regal composure, eyes glinting under powdered brows. A single droplet of sweat escapes, trailing down the side of your temple, mingling with ceruse and arsenic residue. You pray it won't dissolve a chunk of paste and reveal your mortal pink flesh beneath. The monarch smiles approvingly, declaring you the epitome of courtly elegance. Courtiers erupt in applause, and for a fleeting moment you taste triumph, hollow, metallic, and fleeting. The day's proceedings blur into a haze of ceremonial dances, solemn oaths, and whispered intrigues. You glide through the corridors, every inch the frozen idol. A gust of wind catches your skirts. You teeter, and attendants rush to steady you before the high poof topples. A hush falls on the spectators. Should your hair collapse, it would be the scandal of the season. You right yourself, cheeks burning invisibly beneath layers of poison, and pressed on with unwavering grace. Lunch is served as an ornate picnic in the palace gardens, though you remain hidden beneath a latticed arbor draped in silk curtains. A tray of delicate sandwiches and clear soup arrives. You nibble daintily, mindful of residue. The soup's broth must be strained thrice to avoid staining your ceruse. The bread must be torn into fractions so small they won't lodge in lace. You sip water with a bend of the wrist to conceal the subtle tremor from arsenic fatigue. Courtiers marvel at your composure, unaware that every mouthful threatens to betray your secret mask. Afternoon introduces the mist hour, when gentle vapor of rosewater and elderflower fills the air to mask the collective aroma of aristocracy. You wander through scented haze, your silhouette gliding behind pastel ribbons hung between trees. Sunbeams filter through, illuminating minute clouds of ceruse dust that drift away with each breath. You breathe shallowly, praying that no one perceives the faint clang of lead in your lungs. As dusk approaches, you return to your private chamber for the evening's unmaking ceremony. Attendants assemble your trays of cleansers, linen cloths soaked in sour milk, crushed barley, and cooling lily water. You recline once more as they scrub away the day's toxic mask. Each rub reveals mottled red skin, angry and raw. You grit your teeth as they apply soothing poultices, mixtures of honey, rose petals, and powdered chalk, promise to heal irritation. In truth, they cake over wounds and trap heat, prolonging discomfort until dawn. By candlelight, you remove your gown, revealing corsets that have cinched your ribs into unnatural shapes, and stockings whitened with flour that has rubbed into calluses at your ankles. You indulge in a final sip of scented tea, lavender, mint, and the faintest trace of arsenic, a precaution against infection. You close your eyes, exhaustion flooding every sinew. The chamber doors close, sealing you in darkness, but you can still taste vinegar on your pillow. As you drift toward uneasy sleep, your final thoughts tumble through your mind. The morning's tortures will return with dawn, fresh applications of ceruse and rouge, new wafers of arsenic, another gravity-defying poof, another cloud of perfumed poison. The cost of beauty in this era is measured not in coin, but in shattered health, mounting poisons, and stolen breaths. Yet in the morning, you will rise again, embrace the mask, and pay the price once more. Because in the 18th century, pale skin is worth dying for, one bit of poison at a time. The morning after your alabaster debut arrives like a merciless drill sergeant, bright, early, and wholly unforgiving. You awaken in your silk-lined bed, head throbbing from last night's arsenic tinctures and poultices. Outside your window, the garden's dew glitters in the dawn light, mocking droplets of purity you can never attain. 2 silent attendants stand by, trays at the ready. Today's gauntlet, the verdigris veil, the rouge reprise, and the heart-stopping hair contraption known as the Cloud of Versailles. Brace yourself. Beauty's relentless cipher has only just begun. First, you recline willingly as the complexion master returns to refresh your mask. Gone is the rouged lushness of yesterday's beetroot. Now you require a subtler layer of verdigris veil. A pale green wash intended to counteract unwanted sallowness and simulate that coveted, healthful glow. The ingredients are suspiciously military powdered copper acetate, dilute ammonia, and a whisper of arsenic. The paste is thin and watery, dripping at the temples unless you hold perfectly still. You feel a faint zing at each pore, like tiny electroshocks where the metal contacts skin. Your cheeks ripple with indignation. Green has never been your color, but aristocratic trends brook no dissent. While you shudder, the assistant dabs vigorously, blending the wash until you resemble a jade statue, each stroke erasing yesterday's bruises and perhaps etching new ones of chemical fatigue. Next comes the rouge reprise, because no one in polite society may appear too perfectly pale without a counterpoint of blush. Today's rouge is a startling shade of burnt sienna, crafted from paprika oil, red lead, and a dash of mercury. A different colorist uses a goose feather brush to paint 2 crescents on your cheeks, one on each side, then quickly fans them dry with a palm leaf fan. The pigment sinks into your pores with a sizzling softness, leaving behind microscopic burn marks that pulse faintly. You resist the urge to touch your face. Any stray finger threatens to smear the intricate design and reveal the horrors beneath. With face remastered, you are guided to the hair salon, your second prison of the day. The cloud of Versailles demands a structure so lofty it rivals the nearby palace chimneys. A steel frame is gently lowered over your head. Then the hairdresser begins to pack it with layers of your own hair, supplemented by horsehair padding and, if funds allow, flocks of dyed goose feathers. Each layer is glued and stiffened with a resin of pine pitch and tallow. You feel your scalp tighten as the structure grows heavier. Moments later, voluminous curls cascade skyward, fragile greenery trailing like vines. A final dusting of talc mixed with chalk powder seals the style, leaving a hazy aura around your head, so regal and yet so toxic that anyone standing closer than 2 paces risks a chalk bomb explosion in their lungs. Standing beneath a canopy of gauzy lace, you are led to the courtyard for the gilded perfume ceremony. Here, perfumers await with vesper vials of ambergris, civet, and emerald dew, a new concoction of green tea oil, jasmine absolute, and ground, malachite. You lean forward as gilded wands dab fragrance behind your ears, at the nape of your neck, and along the décolletage peeking from your gown. With each dab, you inhale orchestrated waves of scent, so potent they threaten to induce synesthesia. You see tiny sparks each time your brain grapples with the improbable union of jasmine and heavy metal. A courtier nearby coughs uncontrollably, then bows apologetically. No one can predict which nose will surrender first. By mid-morning, you've mastered the art of the silent gasp, an essential skill when ingesting aristocratic sustenance. Beside the pavilion, a small banquet is spread, candied almonds dipped in rosewater, petit fours sprinkled with crushed coral, and a bowl of strained consommé tinted pale green with spinach extract. You sip the soup with a silver spoon, careful not to let acid from your verdigris veil drip into the broth and alter its delicate balance. Every mouthful is a tightrope walk. A slip could dissolve the facial coatings and expose your raw, rosy splotches to the unrelenting glare of onlookers. After this half-torturous feast, it's time for the spectral parade, a slow, measured stroll through the palace's east gallery. The corridor is lined with portraits of long-dead monarchs. Their painted visages leer at you as if daring you to outshine them. Your walk is orchestrated by the mistress of ceremonies, who whispers cadence cues into your ear. 10 steps, pause, 3 small curtsies, 1 grand nod. Your spine twists beneath the weight of your bodice, a steel-boned contraption that has compressed your ribs into an unnaturally narrow hourglass. You breathe shallowly, lungs negotiating with boning, every inhalation a muted protest. Around midday, a hush falls as you pass the Duke of Greystone. He offers an embroidered handkerchief. You take it in gloved hands and dab at the corners of your painted lips, careful not to remove more pigment than necessary. The kerchief collects a constellation of lead flakes, paprika dust, and a sheen of sweat, an accidental confession of your private anguish. The Duke's face blanches, but he recovers with a gentlemanly bow. You curtsy in return, acutely aware that your suffering is both performance and currency. In this court, agony is chic. After completing the gallery promenade, you're summoned for the powder corrective, a brief but critical interlude where assistants retouch cracks in the ceruse and verdigris veil. They use miniature spatulas crafted from tortoiseshell and the thinnest gauze, painting over fissures with more copper wash, blending until the seams vanish. Every retouch embeds fresh toxins deeper into your skin, renewing the cycle of poisoning you've agreed to repeat with pride. The late afternoon sun slants in, heralding the floral shower. You step beneath an arbor of woven vines where fresh flower petals are suspended from thin silken cords. A discreet mechanism releases them in a soft cascade, raining violet jasmine and rose petals over your shoulders. It is meant to be a moment of pastoral grace, but as the petals settle, you feel them adhere to your greasy hair, your chalky face, and your powdered gloves. You twitch as a stray petal lands in the corner of your eye, and you must resist the urge to blink it away or risk smudging your painstakingly layered visage. Dinner is a lavish repast in the state dining room, banqueters seated around a table so long it seems interminable. You're placed at the queen's left hand, an honor fraught with peril. A drop of wine on your bodice could instigate a fashion emergency. Servers glide in with tureens of truffle-studded soups, platters of swan roasted in saffron, and steaming pies of pistachio and rose. You eat politely, slicing morsels with your silver knife, blade washed and re-polished between courses to prevent discoloration. Each bite threatens to reveal the hidden, pallid face beneath your makeup palimpsest. You sip a measure of sweet mead, allowing it to coat your throat before swallowing, lest the warmth crack the ceruse at your chin. As evening deepens, the chamber doors open for the midnight masque, a performance staged in the courtyard under torchlight. Costumed actors emerge, enacting allegories of purity and power. You, the reigning aristocratic spectacle, appear at the masque's conclusion, carried aloft on a platform bedecked with white ostrich plumes and shimmering ribbons. A hush falls, then applause erupts like thunder across the tiled floor. You raise a gloved hand, acknowledging the crowd, every gesture choreographed to showcase your porcelain mask against the dark sky. Flames from the torches reflect in your verdigris veil, causing you to appear both ghostly and uncanny. After the mask, you linger on the platform as court musicians play a stately gavotte. You allow the moment to stretch, a silent interlude in your assault of sensoria. You focus on steadying your breath, suppressing the tremor in your fingertips, and preserving the flawless lines of your face. The applause fades and you are carried back inside, where attendants whisk you off to the boudoir for the final unmaking of day 2. Inside your chambers, candlelight flickers on trays of cleansers and poultices. You recline once more as your diligence is undone. Linen cloth soaked in a mixture of milk, crushed oats, and rosewater are pressed to your skin, each pat dissolving layers of verdigris and ceruse, leaving red wheals in their wake. You wince as they scrape away the last vestiges of makeup, revealing raw, mottled flesh. A restorative balm, honey blended with crushed almond meal and a tincture of violet oil, is applied to soothe the abrasions, but it sits heavy and greasy, locking in irritants as much as it relieves them. While the attendants dress you in a nightgown of pale linen, stiff with mildew from the damp chamber, you lie back and breathe deep. The lingering scent of yesterday's perfume war mingles with the remedial aromas of lavender and almond. A final sip of distilled elderflower water eases your throat. The attendant reminds you to swallow slowly, lest the tart liquid crack the healing balm. Then your eyelids grow heavy, and you close them, cheeks still tingling, scalp still throbbing from the cloud of Versailles. Outside, the moon traces silver patterns on the garden dew, innocent beauty beyond your reach. Tomorrow, you will rise to repeat this ritualistic cycle. A new color wash, fresh rouge scribbles, another architectural hair feat, and the relentless layering of toxins disguised as elegance. But for now, you embrace the fleeting solace of unvarnished skin and unbounded lungs. Because in the price of 18th century pale skin, survival is the rarest luxury of all. And you've claimed another day. The dawn light seeps through lace curtains like pale applause for your suffering as you awaken to day 3 of porcelain perfection. Your limbs ache from yesterday's verdigris wash, and the steel-boned corset still lurks in your muscles, demanding repayment of oxygen debt. You haul yourself upright onto the satin chaise, where 2 attendants await, grim sentinels with trays of vials, powders, and tools for disassembling yesterday's mask before reconstructing something fresh, more lethal, and infinitely more fashionable. Today's theme, the Apothecary's Ballet, a swirling performance of arsenic bathing, crimson tooth stain, and the final architectural triumph of hair, the Temple of Pallor. Prepare to pirouette on the edge of collapse. First, they remove the last vestiges of verdigris veil with linen soaked in a restorative tonic of rosewater and dissolved chalk. You lie back, eyes closed, as the assistant scrubs your temples. Each wipe exposes raw, angry skin beneath, a topography of yesterday's abuses. Hot tears spring to your eyes, but you swallow them. Salt might dissolve the chalk and reveal a patch of unmasked pink that would spell social death. You feel every pore contracting, hauling toxins back into your bloodstream as the old paint detaches in gritty flakes. Once bare, your face resembles a gutted statue. Red, mottled, vulnerable. You shield yourself from the assistant's prim scrutiny as she inspects for any fleck of old poison. Satisfied, she signals for the next act, the arsenic bath. You stagger to your feet as they help you slide into a marble basin filled with steaming water, scented with bitter almond oil, and, behind that illusion of luxury, a generous helping of arsenic trioxide. The water's surface shimmers like mercury, and you gasp as the heat sears your skin. You lower yourself in, submerging your body up to your chin, and the first wave of poison-infused steam pounces on your lungs. Breathe slowly, one attendant whispers, though each breath feels like inhaling fine glass. The arsenic bath is meant to lighten your skin from within, peeling away freckles and blotches in exchange for nausea and tremors. You grit your teeth against the burn, eyes stinging, and imagine yourself a heroic martyr for beauty. 10 agonizing minutes stretch like an ocean of torment before they haul you out. Your limbs shake uncontrollably, the tub water still ripples with chemical ghosts. They wrap you in linen bandages soaked in lavender and milk to draw away the worst of the poison, smothering you in cool damp that hisses on contact with your skin. While you shiver, the apothecary's apprentice dangles a small vial beneath your nose. A drop of essence de jasmin, he coos. It is a potent distillate of jasmine blossoms macerated in spiced wine and purified via charcoal filtration. One sniff feels like inhaling 10,000 petals, but you cough and sputter as your lungs reject any further fumes. The apprentice pats your back with perfumed gloves, evidently delighted by your discomfort. Next comes the dreaded crimson tooth stain. You brace yourself as the dentist, an enthusiastic fellow with goggles tinged by chemical burns, arrives with a glass mortar and a pinch of red oxide. He mixes red lead with vinegar until it's a paste the shade of a freshly slaughtered pheasant. You lean back, baring your teeth, and he presses the mixture onto each tooth, rubbing until they gleam a perfect ruby red. The spice of the vinegar bites at your gums. You squirm, feeling the metal dissolve, enamel, and seep into your jaw marrow. When he finally cleans the excess, your smile is a row of avenging rubies, impressive, imperious, and toxic enough to kill small animals. Courtiers will gape, dentists will drool. You, meanwhile, wonder which festering plague will strike first, tetanus or chronic lead poisoning. With your face primed, you stagger toward the dressing table. Today's powder cadence involves 4 stages: base powder, mid-tone tint, highlight dusting, and veil of the moon. The base is rice flour blended with a pinch of orris root, harmless enough until you consider the layers of previous poison seeking, fresh lodging. They brush it on thick, chanting the season's mantras of pallor. Next, the mid-tone tint, a faint wash of crushed marshmallow stalks and white clay to simulate that coveted shade between living corpse and ethereal sprite. This is art as atrocity. They hand-paint your cheeks and chin with a feather brush so fine it tickles, then firm it dry with a blow of warm air from a metal bellows. Finally, highlight dusting, a sparkling sprinkling of mother-of-pearl powder around the brow and heart of the cheekbone. Each minuscule granule catches candlelight like a droplet of dew, unless you lean too close, in which case they cascade like radioactive snow. The last flourish, veil of the moon, is a brush dipped in liquid silver solution, diluted mercury chloride, that leaves a ghostly gleam over your forehead and temples. You stand back, blinking against the metallic scent, and see the apparatus for what it is, a living alabaster masquerade. Now for the pinnacle, the Temple of Pallor hair design. You've perhaps endured the cloud of Versailles. Today you ascend to architectural apogee. A steel cage resembling cathedral flying buttresses is placed atop your head. A cadre of hairdressers and dressmakers swarm you, weaving your own hair into its arched supports, packing in padding made of horsehair, and the occasional swatch of human hair collected from the chamber pot floor, if your budget permits. Between each layer, they tack silken ribbons of trembling white, silver-threaded nets, and loops of bleached feathers. The structure climbs in tiers, a miniature pagoda of powdered glory. When they've finished, you wear the thing like a stone crown, rigid, heavy, and prone to collapse if you so much as sneeze. Your shoulders buckle under the weight, and you must learn a new posture. Chin lifted, shoulders back, pelvis tucked. A single misalignment could send hair and headgear crashing onto the marble floor, inciting gasps of horror, or worse, laughter. A final spritz of celestial mist, a blend of distilled white rose and buttermilk steeped with arsenic, seals your hair in place, giving your temple of pallor a faint sheen like morning frost. By late morning, the apothecary summons you for the lip contour crusade. No plain lip rouge will suffice. Today you require petal vein, a concoction of dragon's blood resin, red sandalwood powder, and a hint of cinnabar. The artist traces the shape of a heart on your mouth with a quill tip, then fills it in meticulously. The pigment adheres so stubbornly it stains the inside of your mouth, leaving you with a chronic aftertaste of earth and spice. You part your lips to admire. Your smile is now an eternal bloom, a bejeweled slit in the cadaverous canvas of your face. Luncheon, a simple affair of consommé flavored with saffron and a single poached quail breast, selected because it encourages upright posture and minimal mouth movement, thus preserving your paintwork. You sip sparingly, lifting the bowl by its gilded handles so as not to brush your cheeks. The soup is silky, comforting, but you wonder if the saffron was grown in soil that once held arsenic residues. You swallow and carry on. In the afternoon, the sun has waned enough to risk a brief promenade garden, provided you wear the protective lace veil of shadows. The veil is a fine mesh embroidered with black silk and saturated in alum solution to preserve its ink. You drape it over your head like a shroud, and as you step outside, the daylight zings at your face. The veil filters rays into a delicate gloom, but also traps heat and perspiration. Tiny beads of sweat form beneath the lace, mingling with powder in a patchwork of moisture and particulate. A breath through the veil brings dust into your nostrils, and you fight the urge to inhale deeply. Each gulp of air carries microscopic poison. Your slow procession through clipped hedges and rose arbors is accompanied by whispers. See how she moves like a living statue. They do not see the tremor in your legs or the sheen of sweat that might dissolve your face mask. You bow to passing admirals and ambassadors, each curtsy a test of balance with the temple of pallor above you and the corset squeezing your lungs. You pursue the perfect fluid motion, your body a marionette pulled by invisible poisonous strings. By mid-afternoon, you return to the apothecary's salon for the foot-binding finale, a cruel custom newly adopted from foreign courts. Your shoes have always been tight, but today they replace them with silk mules so narrow your toes crunch. To maintain that elegantly downward slope, an attendant wraps your feet in strips of bandage soaked in boiled goat's milk and alum. As they compress your feet, you feel bones compress and pop. Each wrap locks them into place, leaving you with feet the shape of lotus buds, but also the throbbing agony of trapped nerves. You hobble from the chair, each step a declaration of devoted martyrdom. You must practice walking in a small gilded treadmill, likened to a hamster wheel by jesters, designed to train you in the requisite mincing gait. You repeat the pattern 50 times, heel, toe, pause, until your calves tremble under the strain, and the faintest misstep risks unraveling weeks of painful bandaging. As dusk falls, you attend the mirror rehearsal, a private viewing where you practice emoting before a 3-paneled cheval mirror. The reflection shows the accumulation of 3 days' worth of toxins, cheeks gleaming, lips ruby, powder crusted in every crease, hair a fortress of silk and metal, feet painfully sculpted. You practice the perfect expression, a half smile, eyes lowered, chin lifted, a look of serene endurance blurring the line between life and artifice. Final cleansing begins by candlelight. You recline in your boudoir as attendants lay out trays of ephemeral remedies, linen cloth soaked in barley water with a drop of ammonia to lift powder, poultices of plantain leaf and boiled turnip to soothe bruises, and a final coating of drying dust a talcum-like blend of diatomaceous earth and lavender. Each rub and wrap uncovers fresh welts and lesions, a new map of suffering. You grit your teeth as cold compresses press against your cheeks. The bandaged feet throb with every vibration. When it's done, you slip into linen drawers stiff with starch and mildew. You sip a steaming cup of chamomile tea infused with a single pinch of sugar to calm your racing heart. You lie back against embroidered pillows, every muscle still quivering. The distant echo of court music drifts down the corridor, a siren call of tomorrow's fresh horrors. In the quiet hush of night, you feel both emptier and more encrusted than ever, an empty vessel for artifice, layered in death by powder and bound by bone-crusher corsets and bandages. Yet in this vulnerability, you find a strange triumph. You have danced the apothecary's ballet and lived to see the final curtain. Tomorrow, you will rise for part 4, when we explore the final price of pale skin, the reckoning rituals, and the inevitable unmasking. Until then, rest what remains of your mortal flesh, if flesh, indeed, still defines you. The dawn light seeps through the embroidered canopies like a spotlight on your lingering agony as you awaken to day 4, the grand finale of your pale skin odyssey. Your bones rattle beneath the corset's iron ribs, and every inch of your powdered flesh hums with residual toxins. Today's gauntlet, the reckoning rituals, culminating in the great unmasking, the purge of the poof, and the final liberation bath. Steel yourself. Beauty's last blow is the deadliest of all. First, the salon doors swing open to reveal the masked delayer's table, where your face awaits surgical surrender. A single attendant holds aloft an obsidian blade, razor sharp for cutting through layers of ceruse, verdigris, and moonveil. You recline on a high-backed chair, heart pounding as she scores a shallow Y across your forehead. The lines crack open like tiny windows in your plaster facade. With deliberate slowness, she peels back the top half of your mask, rolling the heavy paste into a wax cylinder that hisses as it detaches from your skin. Beneath lies raw, pink flesh, swollen and tender, an uncharted landscape of split capillaries and chemical burns. You inhale sharply, tasting vinegar and regret. The lower half follows, jawline, cheeks, lips. Each removal is a minor crucifixion of nerve endings. At last, the mask lies in fragments on the velvet cushion, and you're left blinking at your reflection. Half born, half dead, undeniably human once more. Next, the lament of the poof begins. The colossal cloud of Versailles that has crowned your head all week, a cathedral of hair, padding, and poisoned starch, must be dismantled. A cadre of hairdressers surrounds you, shears poised like battalions at the ready. They begin by snipping the lace and feather netting, sending ribbons fluttering to the floor. Then they unravel the horsehair reinforcements, each tug cutting into your scalp like barbed wire. You stifle a cry as they peel away layer after layer, revealing your own hair matted beneath grease and powdered residue. A final slice severs the steel cage, which clatters to the floor with the resonant clang of medieval armor. You reach up, fingertips grazing your bald pate, stained with glue and arsenic paste, an accidental war paint. Your head feels hollow, your posture suddenly wrong, as though gravity itself has betrayed you. With hair and mask surrendered, you rise unsteadily for the purge of the poof's remnants. Assistants wheel in a heated steamer, a brass kettle emitting jets of scalding vapor scented with bitter almond oil. You lean over its spout, letting the steam soften the stubborn pomade and starch still clinging to your strands. Each inhale feels like breathing molten metal, but your hands work through the matted hair, pulling free clumps of debris, chalk, starch, rat hair padding, even flecks of crushed jewel powder. The process is unspeakably intimate, your hair stripped bare of artifice and your scalp scalded pink in the glow of the steamer's hiss. When at last the water runs clear and your hair is limp and smelling of burnt almonds, you stagger back to a wooden bench, head throbbing in sync with your pounding pulse. Now comes the final act, the liberation bath. A wooden tub awaits, filled with spring water scented only by fresh lavender sprigs, an antidote to the week's toxic pageantry. You step in, skin tingling at the first contact. Assistants sprinkle in handfuls of oatmeal and crushed barley, turning the water milky. You sink beneath the surface, letting the soothing grains scrub away lead dust, arsenic smears, and every last trace of rouge and verdigris. Tiny particles drift off your shoulders like liberated ghosts. You close your eyes, breath steadying, and allow yourself a single moment of real relief. No citric burns, no metallic tang, just the yield of warm water against worn flesh. Emerging, you wrap yourself in a linen robe perfumed with chamomile and rose. Your skin feels soft but raw, a palimpsest of the week's tortures. You pad to the mirror and behold the woman within, cheeks faintly flushed, eyes bright after days of chemical haze, hair damp and wild. You trace a finger along your jaw, marveling at unbroken skin for the first time in days. The transformation is staggering, from painted marionette to raw, living creature. Yet the court demands one final spectacle. You are led to the gallery for the farewell procession. Dressed in a simple white shift, unbleached canvas rather than starched brocade, you walk barefoot along a red velvet carpet laid atop the cold marble floor. Attendants carry torches that cast dancing shadows on frescoed walls. No powder, no poison, only your bare complexion and the faint clink of unshackled bones. Courtiers line the galleries, leaning forward in awe. They've witnessed your ordeal, your Nahir-Dad resurrection from layers of toxic beauty. The hush is profound, as though the palace itself holds its breath in solidarity. In the center of the hall, you halt beneath a crystal chandelier. A single attendant places a laurel wreath of fresh olive branches upon your head, symbol of purity reclaimed. You raise your arms, palms outward, and bow deeply to the assembled nobility. The hall erupts in gentle applause. No reckless cheers, only reverent clapping like drops of rain on stained glass. You stand tall, chest open, unmasked and unadorned, embodying a fragile honesty more potent than any pigment. Afterward, you return to your chambers for the final reflection. You recline on the chaise, candlelight flickering over journals and sketches charting your week of beauty's absurdities. You reach for a quill and begin to write, capturing every ache, every chemical sting, every compressed breath. This record will serve as testament that pale skin, once currency, exacted a debt too dear for most to pay. You pause, finger tracing a dried tear smudge near the page's margin, a souvenir of the masked delayer's blade. As night deepens, you extinguish the candles and slip beneath plain linen sheets. Your body is free of corsets, masks, and hair monsters. Your skin hums with the promise of healing. You close your eyes, mind drifting to dreams untainted by chemical perfumes or powdered arsenic. In the silence, you savor a single unguarded thought. In the 18th century, pale skin was worth dying for. Yet true, beauty survives only when we emerge unmasked, scars and all, into the light of authenticity. And with that, you drift into restorative slumber, your soul unburdened at last. Imagine uncorking a vial promising a bouquet of roses and jasmine, only to unleash a noxious blast of fermenting fish, rotting musk, and sweaty livestock. Welcome to the alluring world of historical perfumes, where every nobleman and courtly lady mistook biological warfare for elegance. Perfume in antiquity was born from necessity. Sanitation was optional, and effluvia ruled every street. The first perfumers, Egyptian priests steeping frankincense in myrrh and oil, discovered that concentrated resin could mask the stench of tombs, livestock pens, and human neglect. Their ointments were unguents, sticky, viscous pastes rubbed on skin to ward off decomposition. Picture a noble woman at dawn, arms and neck glistening with scented grease, every pore coated in resinous goop. She believed herself divine. In truth, she smelled like a temple catacomb. Moving to Greco-Roman times, apothecaries experimented with flowers, an ambitious folly. They crushed petals of rose, violet, and iris between mortar and pestle, then macerated them in olive oil or animal fat for days. The result was a rancid slush that required boiling to release any fragrant notes. Boiling meant bubbling oils that stunk of burnt vegetation and spoiled grease. The elite endured head-splitting vapors, convinced that slogging through a week's worth of rancid sludge was the secret to seduction. It was less rose garden and more smoldering compost heap. In medieval Europe, perfume entered a darker chapter, the era of pomanders. These were hollow spheres of metal or ivory filled with sponges soaked in aromatic substances. Cinnamon, cloves, ambergris, and sometimes powdered human skull for mystique. Carried on chains or tucked into sleeves, pomanders emitted an overpowering cloud of clove-heavy fumes. The idea was to ward off miasma, the phantom disease-bearing air. But miasma wasn't the only threat. The pomanders themselves grew fetid as their sponges gathered sweat, dust, and bacteria. A 14th century courtier might hover a pomander by his nose, only to inhale a concentrated dose of fungal spores and dairy-based rot. True prophylaxis. By the Renaissance, the obsession deepened. Distillers refined processes. Flowers were distilled in copper stills, yielding aqua vitae, water of life, the precursor to modern eau de parfum. But copper reacts with sulfur compounds in plant material, shredding delicate floral notes and replacing them with metallic tangs. When perfumers loaded vats with carnations, lilies, or jasmine, the alchemical brew spat back a pungent, garlic-like stench. Noble clients endured nose-burning tears, their expressions contorted in agony, all for a few fleeting seconds of genuine floral aroma before the chemical undertow returned. The Baroque and Rococo courts of France ratcheted absurdity to new heights. Perfume mixology became competitive. Courtiers layered dozens of oils: bergamot, neroli, musk, civet, ambergris, castoreum, and civitellin, hoping to craft signature scents. Civet came from the anal glands of African civet cats, producing a rancid, fecal base note that perfumers prized for animalic depth. Ambergris, excrement of sperm whales, lent a marine funk. Castoreum, from beaver castor sacs, reeked of stale urine. The resulting mixtures smelled like a petting zoo mopping up after a whale. Bloody brilliant complexity if you could survive the waft. Every morning, a courtier's valet would douse lace cuffs, ruffle cravats, and mop hair with these concoctions. The court soon reeked of layered decomposition, a perfumed septic tank. Guests approached with fanfare and fans deftly fanning faces to stave off olfactory assault. The faint of heart fled the throne room, gasping for fresh air. Yet appearances mattered. No one dared appear unperfumed, lest they signal poverty, disease, or simple mortal scent. In the 18th century, perfume workshops harnessed new science: enfleurage, a method of absorbing floral essences into fat-coated glass plates. Fresh jasmine or tuberose petals were pressed into rendered hog or beef fat, left to sit for weeks, then replaced with fresh petals until the fat was saturated. That fat was then washed with alcohol, yielding an absolute. Hog fat and beef tallow enriched with flower oil, an imposing texture that had to be diluted mercilessly. The alcohol wash released an initial burst of sweet florals, swiftly overtaken by a greasy undertone and faint whiff of charred meat. A noble woman hoping for jasmine sunrise might instead summon memories of roast poultry. Meanwhile, brandy-based eau de cologne emerged in Germany. Inspired by Italian citrus waters, perfumers soaked lemons, oranges, and bergamot rinds in alcohol. Unfortunately, citrus oils oxidize quickly, turning bitter and rancid. This spawned a new vogue: fragrance towels and handkerchiefs. Rather than direct application, the well-heeled dabbed fabric edges, reviving scent until the next oxidation cycle. You could carry a bouquet in your pocket and a citrus-tinged stench in your nostrils for days. Even as modern chemistry advanced in the 19th century, historical ingredients persisted. Musk pods from ruminants bred in Central Asia required specific fungal fermentation. If fermentation went awry, the musk went sour, developing ammonia-like tangs. Ambrette seed and labdanum resin were substituted, but these too invited microbial breakdown. Perfume houses in Grasse, France, decanted oils in massive oak vats which lent winey, ascetic notes. Bulk production invited contamination: mildew, ascetic bacteria, and rancid lipids, all mingling in a vat of supposed elegance. The truth is, historical perfumery was a dance with decomposition, a flirtation with rot. Every drop represented hours of maceration, boiling, fermentation, and distillation, processes that, without refrigeration or sterile environments, bred bacterial and chemical byproducts. Those noble noses, as refined as they believed themselves, inhaled compounds that modern chemists would label hazardous, irritant, or toxic. They accepted nose-burning headaches and nausea as the price of social standing. By the time synthetic aroma chemicals appeared in the late 19th and early 20th centuries, coumarin, vanillin, synthetic jasmine, lactone, perfumery pivoted. Now, instead of rotting biological matter, chemists could blend stable molecules for consistent, safe scent. But the romance of the past lingered. Vintage perfume enthusiasts still championed Siva, ambergris, and castoreum, despite their olfactory risks. So next time you spritz modern eau de parfum, take a grateful breath. Appreciate sanitary distillation, filtration, and microbe-free labs. Thank progress for taming odorous nightmares into bottled luxury. And remember, in the chambers of history, perfume wasn't just fragrance. It was a noxious, bitter testament to human vanity and our perpetual quest to mask reality with chemical illusions. Those ancient perfumes smelled terrible, because they were. Yet, they survived, captivating generations who mistook rancid complexity for royal refinement. The morning after you hold your robes out of the vault and sniff that first tentative waft of distilled rose petals, the atelier's doors swing open to reveal today's gruesome itinerary. Cold enfleurage, hot maceration, tangy fermentation, and the inescapable stench of animal musk. By noon, you will have inhaled enough rancid oils to cleave your nostrils in two, but the court demands nothing less than a signature scent, a personal bouquet of decay. You begin at the enfleurage table, where alabaster trays lie coated with a glutinous smear of hog fat. Petals of jasmine, stephanotis, and fragrant orange blossom are laid in concentric circles atop the fat, only to be swapped out every 12 hours until the fat is completely saturated. 12 hours seems simple, until you remember that there is no refrigeration. As the day warms, the fat softens, liquefying into a greasy pool that drips onto the linen beneath. You witness petals wilting into blackened mush as embedded insects emerge. Beetles, aphids, stray bees crunching beneath your fingers. The scent is less flower glade and more stinky butter. To capture any true aroma, you must scrape off every inch of fat, then dissolve it in ethanol distilled from brackish vineyard grapes. You hold the vial beneath your nose. A flash of sweetness leaps out, then recoils into a backdraft of animal grease and fermented fruit. You gag, but this is the base for the Grand Duchy's next bestseller. Next, the hot maceration chamber beckons, a copper cauldron steaming with water and crushed petals of rose, lily, and hypocrisy, a now extinct Middle Eastern flower prized for its angelic scent. You don a linen smock and lean over the vat, stirring with a long wooden paddle. The mixture bubbles, releasing clouds of vapor that burn your eyes. After hours of simmering, the fibrous pulp is strained through wool, but the wool clogs instantly with microscopic sludge, pollen, petals, and curious flecks of rust from the cauldron's interior. You swish the liquid in a glass flask and sniff. There's a fleeting shimmer of true floral sweetness before the bitterness of burnt greens and scorched wood takes over. The master perfumer nods gravely. This is the soul of summer captured in a bottle. By mid-afternoon, you're escorted to the fermentation room, a dank cellar where vats of civet musk stew in their own juices. Civet pods from African civet cats, each the size of a walnut, have been tumbled in coarse salt and left to rot for weeks. The resulting slurry is a pungent sludge you will later mix with distilled rose and violet waters. You squeeze the softened pods through cheesecloth, harvesting a thick, yellow-brown oil that drips slowly. Even the lamps overhead seem to recoil. Their heat makes the civet oil bubble and hiss. You lift a small spoonful to your nose. The odor is so foul it triggers a dry heave, yet the perfumer smiles. A hint of animalic warmth, he whispers, the key to longevity on the skin. You wonder what mortal coil you're prolonging. Next comes the extraction of ambergris, the mythic treasure of the sea. Pieces of this whale excretion, aged by ocean currents, are shaved into flakes and soaked in brandy. After days in sealed barrels, the liquid turns cloudy, then clarifies into a pale, honeyed tincture. You taste a drop on your fingertip. It's oily, briny, with a faint echo of excrement. But once diluted in the perfume, ambergris lends a marine musk that softens the harshness of solids. You raise an eyebrow. Centuries from now, people will pay fortunes to smell like whale vomit. The civet ambergris blend is now joined by powdered castoreum, scraped from the beaver's castor sacs. The perfumer explains that beavers were once hunted to extinction in parts of Europe to supply this ingredient. You hold a pinch of the dusty granules, breathing carefully. They smell of damp earth and stale urine. You can almost feel the rodents' terror as they were chased into freezing rivers. This base note, combined with civet and ambergris, will anchor the lighter florals. You marvel at humanity's ability to find romance in such biological horrors. As evening falls, you move to the final ceremony, the art of co-distillation. Flowers, woods, seeds, and animal secretions are layered in a tall copper still, steam rising from the boiling water beneath. A glass tube coils through cold water, condensing vapors back into liquid. The first drips are nearly colorless, carrying the most volatile aromatics, citrus, green notes, aldehydes. But as hours pass, the stream thickens, colored pale yellow by heavier compounds. You stand by the collection flask, inhaling in measured sips, top notes of bergamot, heart notes of rose, and base notes of musk, civet, ambergris, and castoreum. The final blend is simultaneously floral, salty, animalic, and metallic. With trembling fingers, you dip a linen strip into the essence and wave it before your face. The initial bloom of citrus, bright and heady, plunges suddenly into deep funk. Your eyes water. Courtiers waiting in the antechamber hold handkerchiefs to their faces, trading worried glances. Yet the perfumer pronounces the scent sovereign quality fit for a king. You force a brave nod, already planning the evening's removal ritual. Back in your private salon, you begin the unmaking. Linen cloths soaked in a mixture of vinegar, milk, and barley water are pressed to your face. They lift away the last traces of oil and grease, but the skin beneath is slick with dissolved animal fat and metallic residues. You feel fine grains of ambergris and fossilized whale excrement crawling in the creases of your nostrils. Each rinse brings a new wave of stench, stale musk, acidic vinegar, bitter almond. You scrub until your fingertips go numb. Tired and reeking, you change into a clean shift, wishing for modern solvents and sterile glassware. Instead, you'll spend your night sniffing lavender bundles to clear the scent off your breath. You drift to sleep, wondering how anyone in history survived a single bottle of perfume, let alone slathered themselves in gallons of it. The next morning, you will don your coronet of dangerously fragrant oils once more, because in the courts of old, to smell foul was to be immortal, unworthy of immortality. And so the cycle begins again. Enfleurage, maceration, fermentation, distillation, each step an absurd ritual of chemical carnage, all in pursuit of a fleeting whiff of beauty amid the stench of survival. The third dawn of your fragrant odyssey greets you not with birdsong, but with the hiss of leaky alembics, copper stills sputtering their noxious yields into cracked demijohns. Today, you plunge headlong into the alchemy of perfumery's golden age, where innovation only deepened the stench. Prepare to endure cold distillation of wood and spice, solvent extraction gone horribly wrong, and the grotesque art of tincturing animal secretions until the very air quakes with fetid elegance. You step into the workshop's cavernous chamber, where plumes of steam hang in sickly gray curtains. The first atrocity awaits in the spice-steamed corner. Cinnamon bark, cardamom pods, and clove buds piled into perforated metal baskets. Below, vats of water bubble furiously, driving aromatic vapors upward into condensing coils. In theory, this yields an essential oil, pure, potent, and wonderfully spicy. In practice, you inhale waves of phenolic compounds so sharp they burn the lining of your lungs. Your eyes water, and you taste copper on your tongue as aldehydes corrode your throat. The condensate drips into glass jars, but the first fractions are discarded, too acrid and caustic, like inhaling fireworks through a sewer grate. The later cuts hold some cinnamon warmth, but beneath the sweetness lingers a bitter, tannic bite that clings to your nostrils for days. Next, the solvent-soaked table beckons. You watch as vats of crude turpentine, distilled from pine resin, are poured over heaps of crushed nutmeg, coriander seeds, and angelica root. The idea, the solvent will draw out lipophilic compounds that water cannot. After weeks of maceration, the perfumer decants the turpentine infusion, then attempts to wash it with water and alcohol. Instead, you end up with a hazy, watery emulsion that smells like a lumber mill soaked in turpentine and dust. The perfumer nods enthusiastically, but you gag as the solvent resurfaces every time you breathe. You wonder if the final perfume will ever recapture the spice's intended warmth, or simply remain a biting, solvent-scarred echo of its raw materials. By mid-morning, you're beckoned to the resin roast station. Here, Frankincense and myrrh tears are piled on heated brass plates and torched until they crackle and smoke. The fumes are pitched so acrid they make your scalp tingle. You crouch behind a screen as the translucent chunks blacken and sag, emitting streams of carbonized terpenes that form a choking haze. After cooling, the roasted resins are scraped into mortars and pounded into coarse powders. You handle a pinch, inhaling a visceral rush of incense and brimstone that twists your gut. Yet the perfumer assures you this charred base note will anchor the top notes in a regal, smoky embrace. The final product, he promises, will evoke solemn cathedrals and solemnity, until reality reminds you that nothing evokes grandeur faster than a wisp of singed resin assaulting your senses. Lunch is a brief reprieve, a bowl of thin broth spiced with thyme and a slice of dry bread. You taste a hint of rosemary, but your palate rebels at the aftertaste of solvent and smoke. You wash it down with a gulp of apple cider. The vinegar burn clears your head for the workshop's more grotesque rites. The afternoon heralds the maceration of fauna sequence. You shudder as crates of civet pods arrive, their stench already steeped in the humidity of the workshop. Carboys of ammonia solution await, ready to steep the pods and amplify their sulfurous notes. After days of soaking, the fluid is filtered, if you dare call it that, through layers of wool and linen. The filtrate, a cloudy yellow liquid flecked with sludge, is then blended with the day's spiced distillates and resin roasts. You inhale the mixture as the perfumer drips it onto linen strips, an animalic undercurrent so potent it threatens to summon you back through evolutionary history. Horns of musk deer lie nearby, dry frozen lumps that must be pulverized in star-studded mortars. As you grind them, a fine dust clouds the air, and each exhale tastes of medieval hunting grounds, wet fur and fear. The musk ground into powder is mixed with rosewater concentrates, but the rosy top notes struggle to mask the gamey base. You realize that every puff of steam in this workshop is a volatile cocktail of dead creatures, plant toxins, and burnt oils. Late afternoon, the works pivot to the fixative forge, where natural fixatives, orris root, benzoin resin, and ambergris, are heated gently with alcohol in small stills. You stand by the flame, watching as misty fumes rise in spiral columns. The ambergris, aged in oak barrels, yields a tincture that smells at once like salty sea breeze and rancid fat. The benzoin melts into sticky golden syrup, redolent of burned sugar and vanilla curdled by heat. Orris, the pale root of iris plants, releases powdery violet notes, but when macerated in alcohol it exhales faint hints of old library books and mothballs. These fixatives promise to bind the volatile top and heart notes into a perfume that lasts, until you realize they also bind the stench of centuries-old decay into your skin. As dusk falls, the workshop's final trial begins, the grand emulsion. All previous essences, spice distillates, resin powders, animal infusions, fixative tinctures, are measured and pipetted into a large wooden barrel. A whisking rod stirs the chaotic blend until it reaches a buttery consistency. You taste a drop on your fingertip, an onslaught of contradicting signals. Cinnamon heat, pine solvent burn, smoked incense ash, fungal musk, metallic violet dust, and stale sea gravy. The perfumer's apprentice bows, declaring the emulsion harmonized. You wonder what planet this harmony inhabits, but you have no choice but to label it perfume. You step outside to cool air, carrying a linen bundle soaked in the newly born fragrance. The night breeze drips a quicksilver chill across your skin, awakening your pores. You dab the scented linen at your neck and wrists. Immediately, the perfume blooms, first a sharp citrus spice top note from the turpentine wash, then a swoon of incense smoke, followed by a pungent animalic base. The blend crashes across your senses like a chemical assault. Courtiers in a nearby gallery wrinkle their noses, fumbling for handkerchiefs. You straighten your posture and stride through the hall, determined to wear this olfactory banner. The hall falls silent. No gasps, only grim determination to endure your aroma lest they appear unsophisticated. Late into the night, you engage in the unmasking rites. Linen cloths dipped in vinegar, tears of bitter herbs, and barley water. They scrape away the greasy residue, but your skin feels coated in microscopic films of resin and animal fat. You wash again with soap made from alkali wood ash, producing copious lather that clogs the drain with greasy solids. At last your skin feels raw and stripped. The perfume's fragments remain, lingering like stain in every pore. Exhausted, you collapse into a straw-stuffed pallet, the chamber door closing with a soft click. Behind you lie the alchemical horrors of distillation, maceration, roasting, filtration, and emulsification, all conjured in pursuit of an ephemeral wisp of beauty. As you drift into uneasy sleep, you vow that when dawn returns, you will once again stand before copper stills and boiling vats, enduring the fragrance's brutal stages, because in every era of history, perfume has been more than mere scent. It was an odorous gladiator's arena, a chemical battlefield where human vanity wagered its health for the right to hang a bouquet of rot upon the skin, and though your throat still tingles with smoke and musk, you know the cycle will repeat, tomorrow and tomorrow, until civilization discovers deodorant. As the fourth dawn's light seeps into the perfumery, you steel yourself for the final ceremonies, the apotheosis distillation, the curation of caskets, and the inescapable aftermath. Today, you will bottle the alchemy of decay into vials destined for courts and drawing rooms across Europe, and then endure the inescapable reckoning as every last whiff of rancid luxury clings to your skin, hair, and soul. Your first trial is the apotheosis distillation. The grand stills, long silent since yesterday's grand emulsion, are rekindled to capture the purest essences of your week's travail. Into the belly of the largest alembic go last night's spice-infused turpentine wash, the smoky resin tinctures and the animalic emulsions, all measured precisely in copper ladles. Beneath, a roaring fire transforms water into steam that twists through the packed still, vaporizing only the most volatile molecules. You peer through the green-tinged glass sight tube, watching fluid trickle into ornate decanters. At first, the liquid smells alarmingly sweet, peppermint sharp clove and dewy bergamot glimmer, but as the distillation continues, the stream darkens. Acrid meerschaum of burnt cinnamon, the faint funk of musk, the briny bite of ambergris. You cough, clutching the rail, as the pungent vapors claw at your throat. The master distiller nods, noting body, heart, foundation, terms that in reality translate to shock, nausea, lingering regret. Once the distillate is collected, you proceed to the curation of caskets. Each perfume must be enshrined in a vessel that reflects its grandeur and its grotesquerie. You handle flasks molded of Venetian glass, their necks ringed in pewter filigree, each stopper a carved gemstone set in silver. Into these you pour the distillate in slow, ceremonious drips, each drop a promise of regal potency. A courtier's valet steps forward with a quill and parchment to note batch numbers, blend ratios, and recommended dilution rates. You watch as one assistant seals the stopper with wax stamped by the perfumer's crest, while another ties silk ribbons around the neck, colors key to fragrance family, amber for resin-heavy blends, violet for flower absolutes, green for wood and spice emulsions. The visual splendor belies the stench. The polished flasks, once gleaming, are streaked with oil-slick residue. Hands that touch them carry faint whirls of fetid aroma. With the last bottle sealed, you face the inescapable aftermath. The workshop is relinquished to servants to scrub and scald, boilers drained, vats emptied, pipes steam cleaned. But you know no amount of bailing or boiling can purge your person of perfumed trauma. Your hair, crackling with residual fixer, still holds microscopic beads of resin and turpentine. Your skin, though scrubbed with vinegar cloths and ash-made soaps, is a canvas of clogged pores where essences ferment anew. The perfumer proffers a final clearing potion, a concoction of lavender tea, diluted vinegar, and barley water. You sip it reluctantly. Its sour tang coats your tongue like an acid reminder of every drop of ambergris and civet washed down the drain. You choke it back, stanching the tide of memories that rush in with each swallow. Dressed in a simple linen smock, no silk, lace, or pomander pendants, you step into the gallery for the perfume's presentation. The Duke of Florimond, his own ruff faintly tinged from yesterday's trial, invites you forward. He lifts one of your curated flasks, holding it before a circle of nobles and diplomats. You watch as he uncorks it. A hush falls. Then he pours a few drops onto perfumed blotters, hands of parchment folded into elegant fans, and wafts the fragrance in sweeping arcs. Faces tighten. Some stifle coughs behind kerchiefs. Others press fans to their noses with a warrior's grip. Yet they applaud politely, nodding to one another in sober salute to your craft. They murmur that the nuance of smoke and sea is revolutionary, bold, soaked in the romance of exploration. Behind their praise, however, lies the shared certainty that once this scent saturates the court, fresh breezes will be treasured above all else. The final rite comes at day's end, the ritual of redemption. You kneel before a basin of cool spring water scented only with rosemary sprigs. Attendants dip soft claws and press them to your cheeks, forehead, and chest, wiping until the last trace of oil, powder, and must is gone. Each stroke seems to scrub raw a sliver of skin, as if you're erasing your own identity. Your wrists, once so elegantly dabbed in emerald dew or spiced sultana, now bear faint red crescents from the perfume pendants. Fingertips carry the gunpowder-sharp tingle of residual distillate, dissolved only by a final swab of vinegar-washed breadcrumbs. When the basin stands empty, you rise, pale and trembling, a figure finely cleansed but irrevocably marked by weeks of olfactory violence. In the silence of the dimming perfumery, you catch a last glimpse of the gleaming vessels, rows of glass flasks, each a monument to vanity and rot. You realize that historical perfume was never mere adornment. It was a declaration of dominion over decay, a way to stand fragrant amid filth. Every tincture and distillate was a defiance of mortality, masking the stench of human frailty with the pungent breath of processed life. You extinguish the lamp, the final wisp of smoke curling upward like a sigh of relief. Tonight, sleep may bring dreams unsullied by musk or smoke, but tomorrow the workshop will call again. New petals will wilt, new animal pods will ferment, new vats will bubble. The cycle of stench and sophistication will spin on, as it did for millennia, until the world discovers deodorant and synthetic aroma chemicals. Yet even then, historians will raise their eyebrows and sniff, yearning for the era when perfume was less about floral fantasy and more about surviving the smell of survival itself.